Chapter 370, Jade Pendants. Wei Mo told Wei Xing about Yi Zhang's hypothesis. Wei Xing made a sound. Does Shidi still remember the sword cave? Of course I remember. Wei Mo nodded. He did not dare to mention that he had explored that place many times. I was transported from there. Wei Xing said, there is a person called Lin Qian that has been investigating you all this time. This time, they found that the Yao military had taken over our Wukong mountain, and thought that the matter was connected to you. They persuaded the sect leader to allow them into the sword cave. I accompanied them in. Later, in the deepest level of the sword cave, I found a place that was unique. Wei's words made Wei Mo jump in fright. He urgently asked, wait, you say he's called Lin Qian? Yes, Shidi knows him. Wei Xing described Lin Qian's appearance and then gravely said, Shidi needs to be very careful of this person. This man's background is very high and strong. The Xiuzhe under his command are all elite. He led just 100 people, but I wasn't even a match for a normal guard. Wei Xing only needed to slightly describe him, and Wei Mo knew that the Lin Qian Xixiang spoke about was the same Lin Qian that he had met. Thinking about it now, it may not have been a coincidence that he had encountered Lin Qian at that time. He thought it was very unlucky. He had been very careful, but people still locked onto him. Of course, it was just a shock. Right now, they were in the ancient battlefield. Even if Lin Qian had enormously powerful backing, this place had no connection to him. However, he had to be careful when they left. He knew how powerful eldest Xixiang was. Even though eldest Xixiang had not been Jindan then, but his combat abilities could not be underestimated. If even a normal guard was stronger than eldest Xixiang, then what level would that troop be? Seeing Wei Mo was listening carefully, Wei Xing narrated everything that he knew. Wei Mo generally understood the problem of Lin Qian, but there were some words that could not be said and could only be left to rot inside. His attention quickly moved away from Lin Qian. If they could not find a path of exit, even if Lin Qian did not attack, they would not survive. The urgent matter now was to leave this place as soon as possible. After Wei Mo mentioned it, Wei Xing suddenly remembered the jade pendant remnant. Right, Ancestral Master mentioned that the transportation formation had been comprehended from this talisman. Is there a clue here? Wei Mo took the jade pendant. The jade pendant was very old and had a broken corner. At a glance, it was possible to see this was a relic that had lasted through ages. Wei Mo was very curious about an object of the Ancestral Master. He suddenly made a light sound, there's something strange. Pu Yao in the Sea of Consciousness made a light sound at the same time. There is something strange. The person and Yao spoke together. What is strange? Wei Xing hurriedly asked. Wei Mo did not speak. He closed his eyes, and his consciousness wrapped around this jade pendant like it was the tide. Wei Xing's expression shifted. Shidi's consciousness was so strong. Was Shidi planning to walk the path of the Diana Xiu? He then recalled Shidi's preference for formations, and then felt he could be a Seal Xiu. Diana Xiu and Seal Xiu both emphasized the training of the consciousness, but they did so in completely opposite directions. The Diana Xiu's consciousness was to be clear and steady, vast and peaceful, while the consciousness of a Seal Xiu was the path of transformation and cooperation. Wei Xing was shocked. Shidi's consciousness was far stronger than those Diana and Formation Xiu that he had seen before. It reached an almost fantastical level. He imperceptibly furrowed his brows. He knew the consciousness was good. Even as a sword Xiu, if he could cultivate the consciousness at the same time, it would be of great aid. Shidi's consciousness was stronger, but it made a person feel it was too unrooted. No matter if it was Diana Xiu or Formation Xiu, they all emphasized the consciousness, but in the end, their foundation was based on Ling power. Without Ling power, no matter how strong the consciousness was, it was like a person with a weak body, and they were unable to wave the sharp heavy axe. Had a problem occurred to Shidi's cultivation? Wei Xing was puzzled, but he did not speak. Shidi always had his own definite opinions. Even early on at Wukong Mountain, everyone's cultivation path had been different. Thinking about the time at Wukong Mountain, he couldn't help but shake his head and smile. He really was worrying for nothing. With Shidi's practical personality, even on pain of death, he wouldn't cultivate a useless technique. Also, Shidi was usually very strange, and liked to work on those weird and wondrous things. Has Shidi found something? Wei Xing asked. Suo Mo's expression was strange. It seems that the ancestral master of ours isn't some normal person. This jade pendant's origins is most likely extraordinary. The presence on it is very strange and I have never seen it before. Wei Xing smiled slightly and was not too shocked. In his view, he and Shidi were both too young and their knowledge was limited. It was normal for them to not have seen or heard of something. If they had seen it before, then it would be abnormal. What he did not know was that there was an old Yao thousands of years old in Suo Mo's sea of consciousness. Suo Mo almost never saw a shocked expression on Pu Yao's face. This was the first time. Usually, Pu Yao loved to act as though he was the greatest Yao in the world. It was rare for his expression to shift and show surprise. What did you find? Suo Mo was curious as his eyes widened. Powerful. Opening his eye, Pu Yao released a long sigh, and the shock on his face did not retreat. The presence on the jade pendant was left behind 20,000 years ago. 20,000 years ago, Suo Mo felt his tongue was knotted as he stammered the question. 20,000 years. After 20,000 years, even the most powerful Xiuzhe and Yaomua would have turned to dust, and dissipated without a trace. On the battlefield they were in, the piles of corpses had weathered and would turn to dust at a touch. There was someone that could make a presence remain for 20,000 years, what kind of power would that take? The person and Yao were immersed in enormous shock and unable to pull themselves out. A long while later, Suo Mo heard Pu Yao sigh. Compared to them, we are insignificant. With Pu Yao's egotistic personality, for him to say such a thing, it was clear just how enormous the blow that the jade pendant had caused. Suo Mo didn't know what to say. 20,000 years, it really was. He could not find the words to describe his mood right now. After a while, he woodenly left the sea of consciousness and said to Wei Xing, eldest Xixiang, I'm going to study this jade pendant for a while. Just take it. Wei Xing nodded. In the field of studying strange and weird objects, he could not compare to Shidi. Wei Xing did not idle around. There was an endless amount of people asking him for guidance, all of them were members of the Vermilion Bird Camp. Vermilion Bird Camp's daily cultivation was primarily in two areas. One was individual cultivation, the other was battle tactics. In the area of battle tactics, there was guidance from Gongsun Cha and they progressed smoothly, but their individual cultivation was problematic. Most of them had come from grassroots and had never received a complete and proper education. What Suo Mo was able to provide them were numerous kinds of sword scriptures and sword formations. But just the sword scriptures were not enough. No one could guide them through the problems they encountered in their daily cultivation. They could only rely on their own explorations. The sword formation was only useful for those sword shio who had a firm foundation such as Ma Fan. Wei Xing's arrival caused the people of Vermilion Bird Camp that had been wandering in the dark to see light. The worldly apparition that day had been deeply branded into their minds. Just this was enough to make them feel admiration and respect, but many people still had doubts. People that were skilled in cultivation were not necessarily good at teaching. Even more, what reason did Wei Xing have for teaching them? So everyone thought of testing the waters and had Xia Shan go first to investigate. Xia Shan clearly understood everyone's worries. He did manage to enter Jindan, but this was the result of a long period accumulation. In other words, he had used the stupidest method possible to break through to Jin Dan. There was pitifully little he could teach the others. He was also curious just how powerful a genius that could cause a worldly apparition was. He agreed and ran over to ask aid from Wei Sheng. When a professional reached out, it was possible to see if they had the ability or not. Wei Sheng did not withhold any advice. Just a few words, and Xia Shan had such admiration he could kowtow. After going back, Xia Shan greatly advertised how powerful Wei Sheng was. As expected of Darren's eldest Shixiang, the two were generous, did not hide anything, were just the same etc. etc. This time, all the sword shio of Vermilion Bird Camp could not sit still. But to avoid irritating Wei Sheng, the camp used the method of drawing straws to establish an order to ask guidance. This move instantly was effective. To pursue the sword path, Wei Sheng had gone through thousands of hardships, and almost lost his life multiple times. After becoming an inner sect disciple, the one that taught him the sword was Xin Yen, the one in Wukong sword sect most skilled in sword essence, in addition to the fact that Wei Sheng was frighteningly hard-working. Due to this, his foundation was extremely secure. After receiving the complete, void sword scripture, his breadth of knowledge was much stronger than normal sword shio. His early experiences taught him the pain of not having someone to ask for guidance. These sword shio were also Shidi's subordinates. This could be considered helping Shidi out. So when the sword shio of Vermilion Bird Camp came over to ask for his guidance, he easily agreed. Wei Sheng quickly found that the problems many people encountered were very similar. When he mentioned this to Zhua Mo, and Zhua Mo's eyes turned and thought of a great solution. Open a lecture hall. Before, at Wukong Mountain, there would be inner sect disciples that would come at regular intervals to teach outer sect disciples. Wei Sheng felt that this method was pretty good and followed it. The sword teaching hall opened in this fiendish mist. After having this idea, Zhua Mo instantly went into the 10-finger prison. Entering the wasteland beast chessboard again, Zhua Mo's mentality had completely changed. Before, he had treated it as if he was playing a game, but now that the 10-finger prison was connected to whether or not they could escape, he could not be as reckless as before. He desperately desired any information about the Battle of Sealed Extinction. This desire surpassed his thirst for golden souls. He didn't know how to use the 10-finger prison to get information about the Battle of Sealed Extinction, but still he stepped into the wasteland beast chessboard. When the light faded, when the chessboard was laid out, he inhaled deeply. A new battlefield, a new battle. Start. Chapter 371, Bounty Nan Yu was not here, Sang Zhe was also not here, Zhua Mo was slightly disappointed. He had originally wanted to ask them if there were any methods to research information about the Battle of Sealed Extinction. Since the two were actual Yao, they would be more familiar with Yao society. Pu Yao was a true-blooded Yao, but after 3,000 years, he also didn't know anything about what the present Yao world was like. He dared to humiliate Miss Ji Liu. He cannot be forgiven. This person is too hateful. Yes. Who cares about the Genius Alliance, but he dares call her one mole. Darn it, if I find him, I'll definitely have a good chat with him. We aren't a match for him, we cannot just sit back because we are not a match. We need to make him understand offending Miss Ji Liu means offending us. If he offends us, we won't let him have good days. Brother Wang, do you have some good ideas? Tell us. Ha, those garbage scum from the Genius Alliance, they cannot even protect Miss Ji Liu's reputation. We cannot rely on them. We need to rely on our own power and fight on behalf of Miss Ji Liu. Of course we are not a match for Xiao Mo Gu, but there naturally are those who are a match. We'll put out a bounty. Bounty? Yes. There are many people like us who are protectors of Miss Ji Liu. Even though our individual powers are weak, but if we gather together, we can definitely let Xiao Mo Gu have a taste of our power. I've taken out all my allowance money for the last half year to place a bounty out for a powerful expert to deal with him. Brother Wang, this bit of money isn't enough. Of course it is not enough. I don't know who had the idea, but they opened a bounty in the Yao market to deal with Xiao Mo Gu and allows adding to the bounty. The money inside has already reached 2 million. 2 million. Heavens! Xiao Mo Gu is in for a tragically bad time. This is just here. Supposedly, there is a bounty in every city. Xiao Mo Gu will quickly know the power of Miss Ji. This idea is too clever. I'll go immediately. For Miss Ji, I'll take out my allowance for this whole year. Zhuo Mo's face was flabbergasted where he stood. No way, had he poked the hornet's nest. One mole shouldn't be this powerful. Wailing inside, Zhuo Mo even wanted to cry. If this was in the past, he would dust off his "but Ji won't play with you anymore," and leave. What of Ji Liu? What of Qinghua Zongshui? They would only get to stare. He had just prepared to think of the 10-finger prison as a new battlefield and suddenly found that the battlefield was now filled with his enemies. Heavens, don't play people like this. Pu Yao, are there any methods of changing my appearance? Zhuo Mo hurriedly asked. Starting from the 5th prison one can change their appearance, but it is not possible in the first 4 prisons. Pu Yao's answer mercilessly killed Zhuo Mo's last hope. Zhuo Mo's eyes flickered around like he was a thief. Good, maybe they only know the name of Xiao Mo Gu and not his appearance. Just at this moment, a light suddenly flashed nearby and a little Yao appeared. The little Yao saw Zhuo Mo and was dazed. Zhuo Mo saw the other's expression and thought, oh. Xiao Mo Gu. The little Yao shouted furiously and pointed at Zhuo Mo with a finger. Whoosh, all the noise disappeared. The surroundings were silent. Zhuo Mo could feel many eyes landing on his body. Even though he had seen grand scenes before, Zhuo Mo's scalp turned numb and he felt uncomfortable. Now that he was in this situation, Zhuo Mo could only force himself to continue. He pretended to be calm and glanced at the other before moving his gaze aside. He walked forward and had every intention of ignoring the other. The little Yao reacted, and his face turned pale. He felt regretful. Why had he been so reckless and shouted? Free combat was allowed inside the 10-finger prison. Even though it would not be deadly as in reality, but consciousness injuries could not be voided. In the past, there were those that had been too heavily wounded in the 10-finger prison that it had caused their consciousness to weaken 2 stages. After that, incidents of fighting in the 10-finger prison quickly decreased. Later, everyone found that it wasn't just fighting that could create injuries. Even being in the prison battlefield could cause people to be wounded spiritually. If the consciousness was wounded, they could not avoid experiencing the pain involved. Under so many eyes, Zhuo Mo turned into light and left the wasteland beast chessboard. Ha ha ha. Pu Yao's explosion of laughter spread out far into the sea of consciousness. He pointed at Zhuo Mo without any composure, one hand on his stomach, as he laughed without restraint. Zhuo Mo's face was as black as a pot, his tone unfriendly. Laughing? What is laughable? Ha ha ha. Pu Yao did not have any intentions of restraining himself and laughed even more outrageously. I'm going to die from laughter. Street rat, you are a literal street rat right now. Already very discontent, Zhuo Mo's discontent increased because of Pu Yao's laughter. His stubbornness rose. Wasn't it just the 10-finger prison? He wasn't afraid of anyone. He wanted to see what kinds of people had come. Zhuo Mo's mood was vicious and murderous as he entered the wasteland beast chessboard again. The scenery in front of him changed as he re-entered the wasteland beast chessboard. When he saw the surroundings clearly, his heart was reassured. Good. The position when he entered the wasteland beast chessboard each time was different. This was very advantageous for him. At the least, if he couldn't win, he could run. With a trick up his sleeve, Suemo wasn't panicked anymore. He started to think about the influence this incident would have on him. He had had a very casual attitude about what had happened before, and did not treat the incident seriously. Now that the situation was different, his demands were also different. The incident of one mole seemed to be pretty big. After experiencing so much, Suemo was clear that making a big fuss had its own advantages, like becoming famous faster. When he had successfully completed the prison-breaking battle, people had come to recruit him. What he needed was information on the Battle of Sealed Extinction. Truthfully, Suemo had no hopes that this would be easy. This was something that even Pu Yao was not clear about. It was a question even if the Yao world still had information on the topic. Even if there was information on it, it definitely would not be so easy to access. Nan Yu was a normal little Yao. The Wisteria clan of the South Sky had been in decline for too long. Zhangzai's situation was better than Nan Yu, but that was just by a little bit. Suemo had a feeling that investigating the Battle of Sealed Extinction was probably not an easy task. If he needed to use large amounts of resources, it would not be possible to realize it with the two of them. The spiritual imprint on his arm shifted. Nan Yu and Zhangzai had come. Suemo put a thought and passed it through the spiritual imprint on his arm. Moments later, the two arrived. Darren. The two hurriedly bowed. Humph, is there a quiet place? Suemo really felt that there were too many people around. Zhangzai was the first to react and hurriedly said, Darren only needs to put down an illusory formation. Suemo wanted to facepalm. He was so dumb, unable to even think of such a simple solution. It really was an easy matter for him to put down an illusory formation. His right hand rose slightly. A light energy left his hand and landed on the ground. A thin circular curtain of light rose around them and surrounded them. Zhangzai knew when things were good. Darren's formation building methods were very powerful. His admiration rose. Darren was not old, but he seemed to be able to do anything, and was skilled in all of them. Nan Yu's thoughts were much simpler. She looked curiously at the curtain of light. Darren, what illusory formation is this? Little cover-up, a variant of a water Yao art. Water can create illusions, refract light, and is very suitable for setting up illusory formations. Suemo explained as they moved inside the curtain. Zhangzai looked with admiration at Nan Yu. Nan Yu and Darren's relationship was clearly unordinary. It seemed that Nan Yu was Darren's follower. If she was his student, she would not call him Darren, and would call him teacher. Darren still treated Nan Yu as though she was a student, and did not seem like he was interacting with a follower. It was rare to see a Darren that were like this. Nan Yu was very fortunate. After Suemo finished his pointer, he asked, what is Ji Li Yu's background? Nan Yu and Zhangzai's expressions were slightly strange. Darren, you finally thought of asking about this now? Zhangzai knew that Nan Yu definitely did not know as many details as he did and said proactively, Darren, Ji Li Yu is the woman you threw out last time. I know. Suemo said expressionlessly. She is the eldest granddaughter of the Ji family leader, and is loved by all the elders in the sect. She was very outstanding from youth, and it really was that everyone who saw her was in love with her. The second year after entering the Yao art house, she and her younger brother, Ji Cheng, were invited into the Genius Alliance at the same time. Her rise inside the Genius Alliance is much faster than Ji Cheng. She quickly entered the Council of Elders and is the youngest elder on the Council of the Genius Alliance. Genius Alliance again? Suomo's brow furrowed slightly. Continue. Ji Li Yu might not be the next successor to the Ji family, but she is the most famous Yao of the Ji family. Even the Ji clan elder is not as well known as she is. Ji Li Yu might come from the Ji family, but she is not interested in cultivating Yao arts, and studies dancing, singing, and the instruments. She is especially skilled in singing. The sound is enchanting and well-liked by the public. She has many defenders. Zhang Zhe paused, and then emphasized, many. After listening to Zhang Zhe's introduction, Zhuemo instantly felt it was problematic to have offended such a powerful person. However, Zhuemo just felt it was troublesome. His attention was still primarily on the Battle of Sealed Extinction. Have you heard of the Battle of Sealed Extinction? Zhuemo suddenly asked. Battle of Sealed Extinction, what is that? Nan Yu asked curiously. Zhang Zhe shook his head. No. Just as Zhuemo had thought. He mused and then said, I need to research some information about an ancient battle, do you have any suggestions? Will the records room of our Yao Art House have it? Nan Yu said. Zhang Zhe said, if the information Darren is searching for is very rare and obscure, there are some places to try. Zhuemo's eyes lit up. Speak. The first is the Yao Art House that Nan Yu just mentioned. Each Yao Art House has records rooms, and the scale of the records rooms of those large Yao Art Houses are extremely astonishing, and have complete information in all areas. The second is some special little circles. Each profession will have their own little circles. They would have information exchanges at regular intervals. The third is the simplest, a bounty. Bounty? Zhuemo's eyes gradually became bright. Chapter 372 Golden Soul, yes, Darren. Zhang Zhe had started to become familiar with Zhuemo's temperament. This is the most convenient and most plausible solution. The information that Darren needs is most likely uncommon, and we aren't familiar with this area at all. Since this is the case, we can give the task to a professional Yao to do. We only need to supply an appropriate price, one that will move their hearts, and they will definitely try their best to find the information that Darren wants. Zhuemo was persuaded by Zhang Zhe's suggestion. Where do I have to go to put a bounty? You can go to the Yao market, but if it is a more difficult bounty, you will have to go to the Yao markets of bigger cities, Zhang Zhe said. Then you can find the biggest city for me. I'll provide the money, Zhuemo said without hesitation. Zhang Zhe instantly had an expression of difficulty. There is a problem? Zhuemo asked with puzzlement. Darren might not know, but there are access requirements to go to these large cities. My Yao designation level is not high, and so I cannot, Zhang Zhe thought inside, how could Darren not know even this? Was Darren a hidden Yao that lived in the deep forests? Yao designation level. What is that? Zhuemo did not understand. As expected. Zhang Zhe was even more sure of his speculation. No wonder Darren's conduct was so unique. He impatiently explained, Darren, the Yao designation is an imprint that signals each Yao's identity. Every city usually has a big formation. If one cannot reach a certain cultivation, they are unable to enter. The more prosperous the city, the higher the Yao designation level needed. Zhuemo became very interested, then wouldn't one city all be experts? They would have to have people to do labor, or do they do everything on their own? These doorways are just directed to the Yao that come and go. The locals can enter and leave as they will. The locals of these places usually have low cultivation, and their Yao designation is another kind. The management of local Yao designations is extremely strict and unable to be faked. This troublesome? Zhuemo felt the problem was somewhat difficult and asked, then how does one increase their Yao designation level? There are many ways. Like a certification of power. With Darren's strength, you only need to go to the Yao designation ministry, and get an examination of power to get a pretty good Yao designation level. Other than this, you can increase your contribution. Every city has their needs. If you can provide what they need, one can receive an appropriate contribution credit. When contribution credits reach a certain number, one can receive access permissions. Zhuemo said, it's not convenient for me to go. Can I hire a Yao with a high Yao designation level to go? It is probably very difficult. Zhang shook his head and said, Yao of high designation levels basically will go to live in the bigger cities. The bigger the city, the better the environment. Like Wind Creek Pond, Victory Mountain, they are all famous holy cultivation grounds. Even if the living in the cities is hard, they would not want to come back because the rate of cultivation progress is higher in those places. What is your Yao designation level? Suemo asked. Second. Zhang was slightly embarrassed. Suemo turned around to ask Nanyu. You. Second. Nanyu was very open. How many levels in total? 24. Zhang thought and then said, Darren, maybe you can go to the higher prisons to look. Supposedly, there are also places in there that are like Yao markets. One of my cousins once went to the third prison and mentioned this to me. Suemo nodded. He said, from today, I will start passing on, gray scar art, to you. Thank you Darren. Zhang suddenly became excited. He suddenly lifted and opened his palm. A golden ball of light appeared in his palm. He respectfully presented it. This little one's consciousness is too weak, and can only bring one golden soul every time. In the future, this little one will bring a golden soul each time. This is the golden soul. Suemo took over the golden soul curiously. It looked like a golden cloud the size of a palm. It was insubstantially light in his hand. Like it was alive, it was slightly rippling. Suemo could feel a strong presence of vitality. Suddenly, deep and raw ancient words came from Suemo's mouth. No matter how hard Nanyu and Zhang tried to listen, they could not hear it clearly. It was so blurry like it came from the depths of the earth. With speed visible to the naked eye, the cloud turned to a puddle of golden water. The presence of life suddenly became exponentially stronger. Bam! The golden water suddenly exploded and turned into a handful of golden mist. Amidst the deep and indistinct chant, the golden mist silently surrounded Suemo. It was like moisture permeating long-parched sand and quickly entered the body constructed of Suemo's consciousness without leaving a drop behind. In Suemo's sea of consciousness, Pu Yao's body was covered by a layer of faint golden light. He was sitting cross-legged with a solemn expression. A powerful presence of vitality filled every corner of the sea of consciousness. The presence that spilled out were all absorbed by Suemo's sea of consciousness. Suemo felt unspeakably refreshed. This is really good. Suemo said with lingering hunger. He looked at Pu Yao in meditation and couldn't help but smile. This guy was so urgent and impatient. It seemed that the golden soul was very important to him. He did not disturb Pu Yao and retreated from the sea of consciousness. Zhang was increasingly respectful. He did not understand the deep and indistinct chant that Suemo had just said, but it made him think of some things that grandfather had said to him on accident. The Grey clan had guarded its golden tree for more than 3,000 years, and their understanding of the golden soul was much deeper than any other Yao. Zhang knew of all kinds of legends about the golden soul. The method Darren used to absorb the golden soul was completely different than any passed down through the clan. Cultivating in the deep forests, possessing an inheritance from the ancient ages. Zhang gradually drew out Suemo's identity in his mind. Just as Zhang was thinking nonsense, Suemo turned and asked Nanyu, "How have you been recently?" "I've solved the 6th problem." Nanyu seriously replied. Pretty good progress." Suemo was slightly shocked. Nanyu's rate of improvement was faster than he had imagined. It seemed that the little girl worked pretty hard during this time. What he did not know was that Nanyu cultivated with an attitude of putting her life on the line. She had securely remembered Suemo's reprimand from last time. She cultivated day and night and spent any free time on cultivation. Her fundamentals could not be said to be good, and her talent was not outstanding, but she was the first to come into contact with Suemo's way of thinking. In reality, when the prison-breaking 6 problems had spread, she had also tried to solve them. Compared to other Yao, she had received Suomo's thinking, and it naturally was easier for her to solve them. She quickly solved up to the fourth problem, but she became stuck. Her weak foundation stopped her from moving forward. Nan Yu was not stupid and instantly realized this. She recalled a dumb method that Darren had mentioned to her: deconstruct all the Yao arts she encountered on the path. She really ran into the wasteland beast chessboard, and following the chessboard, she deconstructed tile by tile. Deconstruction of the chessboard, forced to leave, recover her spiritual power, and enter the chessboard again to deconstruct. She repeated this. She did not dare to relax one bit. Every time she thought about giving up, she told herself that this was her only chance. When Zuomo finished listening to Nan Yu narrate her daily cultivation, looking at Nan Yu's focused face, the admiration in his eyes increased. At the side, Zhang also had admiration on his face. He had personally seen how crazy Nan Yu had been. Everyone was about the same in age, but this persistence was enough to make him embarrassed. Zuomo motivated Nan Yu. This method might be dumb, but it once produced a Sky Yao. Zhang Zai's heart shook. There was a lot of room to ponder behind Darren's words. Nan Yu did not think much and nodded seriously. The foundations are a matter of practicing. Persisting has great benefits. Zuomo then said, from today, you can start learning South Sky Arrow Art. Do not slack off. Yes, Darren. Nan Yu said with the same seriousness. Zuomo started to pass the two Yao arts. After asking for Zuomo's permission, Zhang Zai released a recording Yao art in case he could not remember it all. Then he would become the criminal of his clan. After hearing just a few sentences, he could not control himself, and almost cried. Grey Scar Art. Lost for 3,000 years, Grey Scar Art was going to see the light of day again. Compared to Zhang Zai's excitement, Nan Yu was much more peaceful. The Wisteria clan of the South Sky was far too distant for her. She only hoped that she could reach Darren's requirements to be able to follow Darren and to give her clansmen better lives. Darren, can I teach my clansmen South Sky Arrow Art? Nan Yu asked. Of course, this was your South Sky Wisteria clan's Yao art in the first place, Zuomo said with a smile. After passing it on to the two, Zuomo did not disturb them anymore. This was the best time for them to digest it. Zuomo sat down and started to ponder the two Yao arts. Grey Scar Art, and South Sky Arrow Art, had been on his hands for a while, but he hadn't had the time to examine them. The two Yao arts had their unique aspects. Zuomo had seen many Yao arts by now, and could see good or bad at a glance. Grey Scar Art was a very unusual illusory killing Yao art, and the way of thinking was extremely strange. Zuomo had to read it over 3 times before he understood. The requirements for cultivating South Sky Arrow Art was even more strict. It was impossible to cultivate for anyone not a Wisteria Yao because only Wisteria Yao could create Wisteria arrows, and the succeeding string of arts could be cast. After reading through both sets of Yao arts, many of Zuomo's questions disappeared. No wonder each Yao clan had their own inheritances. These inherited Yao arts were continuously developed and perfected based on the unique traits of their clan. It would not be a great problem even if these Yao arts ended up in the hands of other Yao clans because the other basically could not cultivate it. Even if they could, the power would decrease greatly. But if these Yao arts were lost, it was definitely a heavy blow to a clan. To Zuomo, these Yao arts were not of great use. Only now did he understand the power of the Great Thousand-Leaf Hands, and Little Thousand-Leaf Hands. These two Yao arts were ones that the great majority of clans could cultivate. Hey, there's an illusory formation. An arrogant voice suddenly came from the outside. Let's go, don't create trouble, another voice urged. Just a bit longer. The person inside is doing something that can't be seen in the light if they put up an illusory formation. Fine, be quick, a group of ripples came from the outside. Suemo looked at Nan Yu and Sun Zhe still immersed in their thoughts, and 2 bolts of light came out of his eyes. He rose and walked out of the illusory formation. Chapter 373, Orange-haired Yao. There were 2 Yao outside the formation. The first was a male Yao was looking eagerly at the illusory formation. What was most eye-catching about him was his bright orange hair. It looked like a flickering fire. The other was completely shrouded in a ball of black smoke so light, it looked as though it would dissipate with a wind gust. A flame lit up on the orange-haired Yao's hand. His hand rose and a handful of fire rain slowly flew towards the illusory formation. "You dare!" A cold snort suddenly rang out from inside the formation. A bolt of silver light flew out of the formation and hit the rain of fire. Pia! The rain of fire suddenly was destroyed. The silver light still had power and continued to fly at the orange-haired Yao. Great attack! The orange-haired Yao's eyes lit up, and he became even more excited. A thread of fire extended from his finger, and he pointed it at the incoming bolt of silver light. Hiss crack! Several arcs of electricity flashed in the air. The silver light disappeared. Hard lightning, the black smoke Yao exclaimed lowly, and thought that the situation was not proceeding favorably. Hard lightning! The orange-haired Yao's eyes became even brighter. A blur came in front of the 2 Yao and a figure appeared. Suemo looked coldly at the 2 Yao. He usually had no positive feelings towards those that like causing trouble. "You know hard lightning?" The orange-haired Yao was very excited and he said as he rubbed his hands, "Let's have another one." Before he finished his words, a hard lightning bolt flew towards him. People that had battle experience, like Suemo, did not have mercy when they decided to attack. However, he hadn't expected the orange-haired Yao to not dodge, and was surprised when the Yao opened his arms as though he was going to embrace the hard lightning. Hiss crack! The young fiend hard lightning accurately struck the orange-haired Yao. Standing among the cracking, the orange-haired Yao's body shook like dice, the strands of orange hair were standing on end and giving off green smoke. Pooh! The orange-haired Yao gave a long exhale of black smoke when he finished shaking and said to himself, "So hard lightning tastes like this." Suomo's anger turned to astonishment. He had prepared a whole string of moves after the initial young fiend hard lightning attack, but since the other had not dodged at all, he was not able to use any of the moves he had prepared. "Brother, give me another one." The orange-haired Yao looked with desire at Suemo. Was this guy not normal? Whichever way Suemo looked at him, he felt the other was not normal. "Xiao Mo Gu!" The black smoke Yao suddenly exclaimed. Suemo shuddered. He was overly reactive to this name now. The orange-haired Yao's eyes became brighter as he laughed. "So you are Xiao Mo Gu. No wonder you know hard lightning. Powerful, powerful. Brother, give me another one." With the last words, his gaze turned to begging. "Ahem, your friend isn't normal." Suemo couldn't help but turn and ask the black smoke Yao. This guy looked more normal. It was a very unintelligent matter to argue with an abnormal person. The black smoke Yao withdrew his black smoke and turned to a black male. His expression was very awkward and he did not know what to say. Who isn't normal? The orange-haired Yao's eyes glared, his expression unwilling, but when Suomo's eyes came back to him, a fawning expression came back to his face. "Brother, give me another one." Suemo examined the orange-haired Yao for a while and felt the other was brimming with strangeness. He turned and acted to leave. "Hey hey hey. Don't leave." The orange-haired Yao was slightly displeasured. "Give me some face, give me another one." Without looking back, Suemo walked away as he shook his head. Meeting such an extreme person, he could not maintain his anger. "If you won't, I will." The orange-haired Yao laughed and stepped forward. He raised his hand for a stream of fire. The flame came unusually quickly, pulling out a ruler straight line in the air like an arrow of fire which howled. Why was this person still bothering him? Zhuo Mo's brow creased. Without turning his head back, his hand opened as he grabbed behind his back. Pia! The fire arrow suddenly exploded in the air like it was crushed by an invisible hand. Powerful, powerful. The orange-haired Yao was even more eager. Again. Zhuo Mo finally became angry and raised his hand and released 3 bolts of Yang Fiend Hard Lightning. Pia. The 3 Yang Fiend Hard Lightning accurately struck the orange-haired Yao. Hiss crack, hiss crack, hiss crack. The eyes of the orange-haired Yao suddenly became straight, his entire body shaking randomly as his hairs stood up. Zhuo Mo was slightly surprised. The other had been struck simultaneously with 3 bolts of Yang Fiend Hard Lightning but still wasn't thrown out of the Wasteland Beast chessboard. He knew some rules of the 10-finger prison now. Being attacked inside the 10-finger prison was just the same as being attacked in reality, but what was wounded was not the flesh body but the consciousness. Pooh! The orange-haired Yao slowly exhaled a mouthful of black smoke. His paralyzed eyes slowly became normal. He closed his eyes and was motionless. The black smoke Yao that had been idling around now looked warily at Zhuo Mo. Zhuo Mo detected the wariness of the black smoke Yao. He was thoughtful and did not attack. He looked with interest at the other. The orange-haired Yao opened his eyes and roared with laughter. I got it. A ball of lightning suddenly appeared on his hand which twirled around. However, the color was different than Zhuo Mo's silver hard lightning. The ball of lightning in the other's hand was a dazzling red as it snapped. Flame-infused hard lightning. Zhuo Mo was even more surprised. Good eyes. The orange-haired Yao laughed loudly and said proudly, but still not as powerful as yours, brother. Just about 7 or 8 tenths. You can copy other people's Yao arts? Zhuo Mo asked curiously. Am I not strong? The orange-haired Yao laughed loudly. Don't be jealous. Zhuo Mo couldn't resist grinning. At the side, the black smoke male continuously wiped his sweat. Did this guy not know who he was talking to? Can your hard lightning be more powerful? The orange-haired Yao asked probingly. Yes. Zhuo Mo nodded. Seeing the eyes of the orange-haired Yao light up, he said with a smile, but I don't know how. What Zhuo Mo said was true. There were many transformations of little thousand-leaf hands, and every Yao art had their unique aspects. However, if he really wanted to express the full powerful of the little thousand-leaf hands, it required cultivating great thousand-leaf hands to a certain stage. Zhuo Mo had used little thousand-leaf hands all this time, but his time on great thousand-leaf hands was much less. The orange-haired Yao had an understanding expression as he made a sound of acknowledgement. He suddenly thought of something. You are Xiao Mo Gu. Yes. Whoa, a famous Yao. The orange-haired Yao was startled. He suddenly examined Zhuo Mo from top to bottom deeply. Brother, your bounty is very high. It's at least 500,000 to kill you once. Over 10 times and it is above 6 million. How about we work together and split the money? Zhuo Mo smiled unconcernedly. Never mind if you are not willing. The orange-haired Yao felt slight regret but then he patted his chest. Don't worry, I've gotten attacked by you so now we are brothers. My maxim is that to be brothers, one has to be loyal. The black smoke Yao's face was filled with helplessness as though he was going to cover his face and sigh. Then thank you very much, Zhuo Mo said with a smile. I'm very loyal. The orange-haired Yao had a proud expression. Zhuo Mo felt this person was very interesting. His thumb went up. Loyal Yao. This name is good. The orange-haired Yao was full of bravado. In the future, call me Loyal Yao. Mo suddenly narrowed his eyes and looked behind the orange-haired Yao. A figure was quickly coming towards them. Xiao Mo go, it took me great trouble to find you. Qinghua Zhang Shui's dark and poisonous voice was like the hissing of a venomous snake in the darkness. Brother, to be a Yao, you have to loyal. As a male Yao, you cannot bend your spine to the influence of money. The orange-haired Yao stopped Qinghua Zhang Shui with his body and sincerely addressed him, Brother, if you lack money, I can lend to you, but don't be a disloyal Yao. The expression of the black smoke Yao changed slightly. It was possible to see at a glance from Qinghua Zhang Shui's presence that he was not an ordinary Yao. Qinghua Zhang Shui's expression became even darker. He squeezed out between his teeth, leave. Hey! Your temper is really bad. It's not good to be like this. To be a Yao, you have to have a breadth of chest, of course, even more importantly, you have to be loyal. Qinghua Zhang Shu was infuriated. Where did this idiot come from? Leave. If you keep chatting, I'll destroy you. Fight? Come. Ha, I like this the most. The orange-haired Yao's eyes lit up in eagerness. Qinghua Zhang Shui could not suppress it any longer. He raised his hand and a blue light flew out. The blue light danced in the air and quickly formed the shape of a flower. Blue flower family. The black smoke Yao's expression changed greatly. The blue flower in the air suddenly lit up and flew towards the orange-haired Yao. The speed of the blue flower was slow and idle. Ha! Taste my fire hard lightning. The orange-haired Yao excitedly threw out a fire-red hard lightning. The fire-hard lightning directly struck the floating blue flower, but an unexpected scene occurred. The fire-hard lightning directly passed through the blue flower and flew into the distance. The blue flower was not damaged at all and still flew lightly towards the orange-haired Yao. The orange-haired Yao did not believe his bad luck and sent out a few more Yao arts. Without exception, they all seemed to pass through the air, and did not stop the blue flower at all. Go die, the completely rampaging Qinghua Zhang Shui bellowed. Zhuo Mo's brow furrowed. He smelled danger from the slowly moving blue flower. Yang fiend hard lightning, bone-crushing obscuring wind, void pass, the 3 Yao arts were sent in succession. The 3 Yao arts passed through the blue flower without any resistance. Ha! Qinghua Zhang Shui laughed proudly at this time. It's useless. All of you, die. Dozens of blue flowers rose up beside him and howled as they flew towards Mo and the black smoke Yao. These blue flowers were light and seemed very slow. The blue flower landed on the body of the orange-haired Yao. Pia, a clear blue flower pattern was imprinted on the body of the orange-haired Yao. Blue flower soul bite. All of you, wait for your death. Qinghua Zhang Shui's wild laugh suddenly stopped. He looked in disbelief at the orange-haired Yao. You, the orange-haired Yao looked curiously at the blinking blue flower on his body. He raised his head, and his eyes seemed to be ignited. His body suddenly shifted and like a gust of wind, it intercepted the blue flowers. Pia. His body became covered with flashing blue flowers, and looked extremely strange. Qinghua Zhang Shui gaped at the orange-haired Yao covered in blue flower imprints as though he was struck by lightning. The orange-haired Yao looked his head to look and sked in praise. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Qinghua Zhang Shui. He pointed at the empty places on his body and asked desirously, Brother, add 2 more here. Qinghua Zhang Shui's expression wavered. He suddenly shrieked. His figure became blurred and after struggling for a moment, he disappeared with a clap. Miser. The orange-haired Yao twisted his mouth. It's fine if you don't want to give it, don't run. He rubbed his chin and said with a serious face, this kind of Yao, one cannot be brothers with. He turned his face and looked towards Mo, right, brother? Mo looked dumbly at the orange-haired Yao's body covered in blue flowers and was speechless. Chapter 374, Wasteland Beast Chessboard, Match. In reality, the orange-haired Yao looked extremely weird at this moment. Especially since he did not know a glowing blue flower was imprinted on his lips. But he was extremely chatty, so that the blue flower opened and closed. It was very strange. Ahem, do you not feel discomfort? Suemo couldn't resist asking. The orange-haired Yao's body was covered in blue flowers that shined. He seemed to be unaffected. Suemo was not so naive to think that the blue flowers just looked pretty. In reality, he considered the blue flowers vicious and deadly. The little thousand-leaf hands, that had been so successful before, was unable to stop the blue flowers. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation after he learned little thousand-leaf hands. In terms of strangeness and viciousness, the blue flower definitely ranked in the top 3 of the Yao arts Suemo had encountered. When the blue flowers had appeared, Suemo's hairs had stood on end. The strong feeling of danger that had erupted out of the bottom of his heart back then were still a faint mist on his heart now and had not dissipated. No. The orange-haired Yao was very proud. The honored undying body like the one I have, how can I fear these ruined flowers? Do not admire me. The black smoke Yao's expression froze and it quickly became strange. Suemo couldn't help but grin. This guy was pretty interesting. But these ruined flowers do have some substance. I can't decipher all of it. The face of the orange-haired Yao that had been proud suddenly collapsed as he said, full of struggle, it is such a pity. I wanted to learn this move. So tempting. This is probably a Yao art related to the blue flower family, it is definitely not easy to copy. Suemo comforted. This move is also too feminine, and it is not suited for real males. That's right. The orange-haired Yao's mood quickly rose. He laughed and said, brother, it is you who understands me. We don't want these ruined flowers. Loyal males need Yao arts with presence. Ooh, the fire lightning is perfect. Looking at the oblivious orange-haired Yao, the mouth of the black smoke Yao was bitter. Blue flower family. That was the blue flower family just now. Was the blue flower family so easy to offend? He was full of regret at this moment. How come he hadn't stopped Big Orange? If they hadn't disrupted the other's illusory formation, they would not have stirred Xiao Mo Gu. If they did not draw out Xiao Mo Gu, they would not have become enemies with the blue flower family. His face was black to begin with and now its color was as deep as the bottom of a pot. However, he also knew that the enmity had already formed. Just now, Big Orange had completely offended the blue flower family. The orange-haired Yao was heartless and did not worry at all. He excitedly ran next to Suemo, brother, if there is something fun, remember to call me. Suemo saw other Yao pointing towards them out of the corner of his eyes. His heart suddenly jumped. He knew that the Yao had recognized him. He smiled at the orange-haired Yao and said, NN, if there is anything fun in the future, I'll definitely go find you. But I've got something I need to attend to right now. The orange-haired Yao was slightly regretful and reluctantly left after exchanging spiritual imprints with Suemo. He clearly had not had enough fun. The black smoke Yao noticed the situation in the distance and glanced at Suemo with surprise. The orange-haired Yao had been exhausted. After waving to Suemo, he left with the black smoke Yao. Suemo liked this slightly idiotic person very much. Due to this, he did not want the other to be drawn into this matter. He glanced at the Yao in the distance that were pointing at him. He knew that his tracks could not be concealed. Nanyu and Sangze were comprehending the Yao arts they had just received and it was not a good time to be disturbed. Suemo knew very well what was going to happen next. He was at great ease. His mood did not change at all. His experiences after leaving Wukong Mountain, the developments along the road and the many battles, he no longer felt terror when facing combat. He stood silently and waited for the others to appear. A short while later, several figures quickly neared with astounding speed. Xiao Mo Gu. He's over there. These voices were filled with excitement and joy. The bounties every large Yao market had on Xiao Mo Gu had been continuously rising. If they could use Yao arts to record the process of defeating Xiao Mo Gu, they would receive a great reward. Money did not just move the hearts of people, they also moved the hearts of Yao. Even more, the one that defeated Xiao Mo Gu would not just receive wealth, any person that defeated Xiao Mo Gu would become famous. In any case, this was the 10-finger prison and no one would die. At most, it would just be wounds to the consciousness. Compared to the rewards, this bit of risk was easy to dismiss. Where else could they find a matter where they could get fame and wealth together? Mo was like a powerful magnet continuously attracting other Yao. Seeing the figures approaching, Mo's clear and indifferent pupils suddenly shot out several cold and intimidating lights. Without any warning, these people gave sharp wails. The figures seemed to be split in half by something. Body parts that were cleaved off flew out a few zhang before they disappeared. Careful! There are ice blades. It's an illusory formation. Exclamations rang out. No one had expected that Xiao Mo Gu had set out ice blades illusory formations so far away from his position without leaving any traces. Hiss, many people couldn't help but inhale sharply. Ice blade illusory formations, these were not high-level Yao arts. Ice blade was a little Yao art, the illusory formations had been composed of two kinds of low-level water Yao arts. What made all the Yao inhale in shock that these people had been struck by the blades least 150 zhang away from Xiao Mo Gu. Without changing expression, he had set down traps 150 zhang away. His tactics and power were all essential to this. Many people that had vulturous ideas previously seemed to have a bucket of cold water poured over their heads. The chilling fear struck their hearts. The bounty was not so easy to get. Pia Pia. Another few lights flashed. Another few people had been thrown out of the wasteland beast chessboard. Many Yao were not even able to make out what trick these people had fallen for. The mood suddenly became tense. Some Yao even had thoughts of retreat. Their steps slowed down as they looked uncertainly at Xiao Mo Gu. The other seemed too calm. Did he have something to rely on? If he did not have support, how could he not be nervous at all? The troop quickly spread out. Those with nimble minds seemed to feel the danger. It was good to let other people test the waters. Only those that could remain until the end could reap the benefits. Mo calmly stood there as though he did not see the enemies coming at him from all directions. He was not pretending to be calm. His heart was as serene as water, his consciousness was unprecedentedly lively. Every action in the surroundings seemed to be seen in the palm of his hand. The comfortability he felt was like being a fish in the water made every nerve in his body feel pleasure. He could clearly feel the surrounding environment was filled with closeness. Suddenly, he understood. This was the wasteland beast chessboard, this was his territory. Boom! His mind seemed to suddenly exploded. The barely discernible bond with the surroundings became blinding like oil poured onto fire. Wasteland beast chessboard. He seemed to see a wasteland beast shrouded in the smoke that looked at him. That pair of vicious lantern-sized red eyes did not hold viciousness and savagery. It only stared deeply at him. In the sea of consciousness, Pu Yao's sigh sounded out. Mo heard this sigh filled with the burden of age, but at this time, he did not have the time to study the meaning behind this sigh. His eyes did not move away from the wasteland beast at all. His face was raised. The wasteland beast was half crouched in front of him. Mo was not short, but he was just able to reach the toe of the wasteland beast. The wasteland beast looked down at Mo. The deep red eyes were as deep as the ocean and were unable to be understood. It stared at Mo for a while as its body slowly disappeared from in front of him. Mo suddenly shook. The shouts and roars suddenly entered his ears like a tide. He seemed to be in a different world. Had it been a delusion just now? Sui Mo shook his head hard. Where was the wasteland beast in front of him? There was no time to think. The closest enemy was already within 100 zhang of him. Ice Blade's illusory formations were not high-level illusory formations, and if the other had even the slightest awareness, they were ineffective. All of the Ice Blade formations were completely swept away. The crowd of Yao's morale rose. Even if Xiao Mo Gu had some great ability, he could not defend against so many people. There were more than 40 Yao that were charging, and many of the Yao that had been watching could not resist charging as well. Maybe they could get some benefits in this mess. Then they would really profit. The Yao arts on the hands of many Yao started to flash. The crowds became excited. In the next second, hundreds of Yao arts flew towards Xiao Mo Gu like rain. No matter how strong Xiao Mo Gu was, he could not dodge all of them. Victory was right in front of their eyes, the crowd of Yao was excited, and the spectators continuously casted recording Yao arts in the fear they would fail. Xiao Mo Gu was being ganged up on. This was great news that would shake the Yao world. Those that were experienced always warned their students this was the outcome of offending great personages. So what if you could break the prison? People could torment you however they want. In the battlefield, Xiao Mo Gu was still motionless. He seemed to not see the lights of the Yao spells in the hands of the Yao. He lightly raised his right hand. A right hand that was extremely normal. A light that was not blinding lit up on the fingers of his right hand. He slowly breathed out, Wasteland Beast Chessboard, match. The voice was not loud and was as soft as the wind, but it blew into every corner of the Wasteland Beast chessboard. All of the Yao in the Wasteland Beast chessboard were disturbed and raised their heads in shock. Silently, the black and white tiles within 150 zhang of Sui Mo seemed to become alive and slowly turned. Time seemed to have stopped in this second. All the Yao that had charged into this area of a radius of 150 zhang froze where they stood. Many strange statues stood next to Sui Mo. They maintained their running posture. Some still had lights on their hands, others were slanted forward as though they could fall at any moment. All the noise disappeared. It was deathly silently within 150 zhang of Sui Mo. The Yao watching from a distance looked at this strange and fantastical scene. What had happened? No one understood. Under their puzzled eyes, Sui Mo slowly sat down cross-legged. Among the spectators, one person's body suddenly shook fiercely. His shock-filled face suddenly became as snowy white as paper, his eyes filled with astonishment. Was it? Chapter 375, Yao Art Cage, was it, that he was able to control the Wasteland Beast chessboard? Ming Ju Zi's heart beat wildly. In his eyes, the process of Xiao Mo Gu folding his legs as he sat was occurring in slow motion. He looked with disbelief at Xiao Mo Gu. He had vast knowledge, and he knew that the battle now had reached another level. It seemed that those Yao that had charged towards Xiao Mo Gu were being controlled, but that was not true. Another battle had just started. Xiao Mo Gu's focused expression caused Ming Ju Zi to believe his speculation even more. It was just, he hadn't really expected there were people able to control a prison. Ming Ju Zi looked dazedly at Xiao Mo Gu and his thoughts wandered. He was suddenly full of curiosity about what Xiao Mo Gu's last move in the prison-breaking battle was. Breaking the prison did not mean controlling a prison. For example, Xian Lu Daren had set down vast water clear skies, but he was not able to control vast water clear skies, it just provided a slight advantage for him. Throughout history, successful prison breakers were mostly like Xian Lu Daren, but there were exceptions. Throughout history, there have been 3 prison breaker Yao that could control a prison. This kind of secret information was only usually known by family with long histories. Supposedly, to control a prison, the crux was in the last attack of the prison-breaking battle. In a prison-breaking battle, the further it proceeded, the more ferocious it was. The last attack was usually the strongest and most vicious attack. The formation of the new prison had a large connection to the last attack, and the ability to control a prison was connected to the last attack as well. Of course, these were all speculations, ones that circulated in a certain group. Because it could not be proven, no one knew what the last move of the three Darren in the past had been. Up until their death, they had not revealed the secret. This speculation had been formed by some concerned people from all kinds of hints and clues. Everyone had found to their shock that, through different channels, that all three Darren had mentioned the last move to a certain degree. However, many people also did not believe this because these hints could not prove anything. But Ming Ju Zi believed it. Because he coincidentally knew a bit more than other people. Ming Ju Zi was not interested in the matter of Xiao Mo Guo and the Genius Alliance to start with. This matter might have made a fuss, but not many of Ming Ju Zi's peers paid much attention to it. High-level Yao family had their own high-level groups. They were only interested in matters of their circle. Ming Ju Zi was not too interested, but just curious what the Wasteland Beast chessboard looked like, so he came to see. He had not expected to see such an amazing scene. The 150 zhang radius around Zuimo was like a gray and white territory of death. Everyone seemed to be unmoving and silent. There was a circle of Yao surrounding it, but no one dared to step into the area. The scene in front of them surpassed their limits. Countless recording Yao arts flashed. The scenery in front of Zuimo changed. An enormous chessboard appeared in front of him. On this chessboard, there was only him, and his opponents that had been pulled in. However, the number of opponents was very high. All 71 Yao that had been drawn in were his opponents. In other words, he needed to fight against 71 opponents simultaneously. There was not one thread of fear in Zuomo's heart. This was his territory. Hiss hiss hiss. Countless lights suddenly flew out of the black and white chessboard and grabbed onto the Yao. Wasteland Beast chessboard. Everyone felt their vision blur and they lost sight of Zuimo. When they could see the surroundings clearly again, they found to their shock they were inside cages of light. The arm-thick pillars of light flashed with complex and eerie lights. Yao Art Cage. The match had begun. Some Yao that thought highly of themselves snorted coldly and cast Yao arts towards the cage. Yet no matter how they released their Yao arts, they could not move the light pillars at all. Smarter Yao did not move rashly and carefully examined the surroundings. There were those with power among the 71 Yao. Jin Zhen was one of them. He was from a branch family of one of the 5 great clans, the Gold Clan. He was young and smart, his power unordinary. In this length of time, there were no Yao arts that attacked him. He instantly understood that the way to exit was on this light cage. He calmed his mind and inspected the pillars of light. The lights that flashed on each arm-thick pillar were different. Through the light, he was able to see layers of interwoven little Yao arts. He suddenly felt they were familiar to his eyes. He suddenly recalled what the Yao art lights that glowed on the pillar of light seemed like, the prison-breaking 6 problems. Yes, it was the prison-breaking 6 problems. The construction of Yao arts on the light pillars were the same as the prison-breaking 6 problems. Sweat poured off Jin Zhen. He opened his mouth but could not produce a sound. How could he not be familiar with the prison-breaking 6 problems that had been so popular in the recent past? He was even able to recite every problem, including their answer. But when he faced Yao art problems that were similar to the prison-breaking 6 problems, there was only hopelessness in his heart. Based on his own power, he could only solve 3 of the prison-breaking 6 problems. Even when the answer to the 6th problem had come out, it had taken him 6 whole days to understand. Please don't be too difficult. Jin Zhen grabbed the last thread of hope and prayed inside. He trembled and suppressed the wild beating of his heart as he looked closely. Upon closer inspection, he almost fainted away. Little Yao arts were packed together and connected with abnormally complex ways. Looking over, it made one have a big head. He really had been possessed to come running into this matter. Jin Zhen was very dispirited. He probably could not avoid being wounded this time. This was great. He needed to pay a fee for healing. It was really unprofitable. His heart suddenly moved. He definitely had not hopes of solving, but he could record what he was seeing. He might even make a sum. The more he thought, the more excited he was. He hurriedly cast a recording Yao art. When the light of the recording Yao art rose, he couldn't help but laugh. It was usable. A door closed, but a window had opened. He had some ideas, and knew what was the most important. He did not spare his spiritual power and carefully recorded the Yao arts on every pillar of light completely. Haha, this was all money. Just as he finished recording, the pillars of light lit up to a blinding degree, and suddenly were like thorns piercing his body. An excruciating pain came. With a wail, his vision darkened. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The Yao that maintained their strange position around Zhuo Mo continuously turned to balls of light and disappeared. Ming Ju Zi knew these people definitely were thrown out of the wasteland beast chessboard. Amazement flashed through his eyes. From beginning to now, Xiao Mo Gu was sitting at his original spot and had not moved at all. What was that battle which was unable to be seen like? How did so many people get defeated? He was filled with curiosity and his gaze was bright. Zhuo Mo slowly opened his eyes. A smear of exhaustion flashed through his eyes. 71. Yao Art Cages. Even with the advantage of being on his home territory, this was not an easy matter for him. The entire battle did not look to be very fierce, but at many places, it was as though he was walking on wire with dangers all around. This was the first time that he used the wasteland beast chessboard. Fortunately, what he encountered were not experts. Otherwise, if they entered battle, he would probably be unable to attend to all of them and could not escape defeat. If he lost, the backlash would heavily injure his consciousness. The wasteland beast was behind him as it looked down. It was like a blade on his back. Suddenly, several figures charged out of the Yao crowd lightning fast towards Zhuo Mo's eyes narrowed. His heart felt grave. These people that were charging over had timed it perfectly. They were not average. His consciousness had been greatly expended in the match, just now, and this was the time he was most exhausted. If they gave him 2 breaths of time, no, even 1 breath, he would be able to resolve these attacks. It seemed he still was inexperienced in fighting with Yao. He silently made note of the mistakes he made this time. He did not care too much about being killed and thrown out of the wasteland beast chessboard. In any case, it was just wounding of his consciousness. If he could learn something from it, it was a profitable transaction because this could save his little life. So Zhuo Mo was not panicked. He was even slightly curious what it would feel like to be thrown out of the 10-finger prison. ZZT. A sound like a copper wire being plucked sounded from behind him. A purple arrow of light flashed past Zhuo Mo's face. The purple arrows of light were so fast that people were hard-pressed to dodge them. It passed through a Yao moving forward at fast speed. This Yao didn't even have the time to make a wail before turning into a ball of light and disappearing. Crash, the Yao at the very front suddenly tripped without any signs. 2 gray-green chains of mist were wrapped on his feet. This Yao was of considerable power. He reacted very quickly. In the instant he fell, the light blade on his hand sliced towards the green mist chains on his feet. Pew! The tip of gray-green sword suddenly came out of his chest. The sword tip dissipated into mist. His eyes were full of disbelief as he turned to a ball of light and disappeared. ZZT ZZT ZZT. The sound of a copper wire being plucked continued. A vine bough had appeared in Nan Yu's hands at some unknown time. Every time the bow was stretched, a purple light would flash and a vine arrow would be on the string. Zhangzai's appearance had changed greatly at this time. His hair was gray-green and waved like water grass at a strange rhythm. His eyes were covered in a layer of faint green mist. His body was shaking like dice. Every time he shook, ripples that were hard to discern would spread, and an icily murderous energy spread. The spectators all changed expression. High-level Yao arts. Ming Juzi was unable to control himself any longer and exclaimed. Nanyu had coincidentally woken up from her meditation. Seeing Zhuai Mo was being attacked, she did not hesitate in attacking. What she used was the South Sky Arrow art that she had learned. Today was the first time she had cultivated it, but South Sky Arrow art was truly the inherited Yao art of the South Sky Wisteria clan. Nanyu learned it with ease. There was none of the difficulty she encountered with normal Yao arts. At many places, it seemed like instinct. She was in a hurry to support Zhuai Mo. There was no other thought in her heart, and she gradually entered the perfect state. Zhangzai had woken up a bit earlier than Nanyu. He had not cultivated gray scar art, to the point he forgot his surroundings like Nanyu did. It was the opposite. He had a sense of everything that was happening outside. Seeing Darren protecting them, he felt grateful. Even though he knew that this would offend people, he did not hesitate. South Sky Arrow art. Gray Scar art. Two sets of Yao arts that had once dominated, and been lost through time. They were like a sword that had the dust brushed off, the sharp edges appeared in front of the world again. Just like the glory of 3,000 years ago. Chapter 376, We Need Real Combat. Nanyu and Zhangzai instantly intimidated the crowd of Yao. The purple vine arrows were as quick as lightning. No Yao was able to dodge. The purple lights tore apart the air. The gray-green streaks were full of transformations. They were like assassins wearing face-skin masks that could not be predicted or defended against. In the blink of an eye, the murderous ambushers all turned to white light and disappeared. No spectator dared to move. They may not be like Ming Juzi and realized with a glance that what Nanyu and Zhangzai were using were high-level Yao arts, but they were able to see that the two Yao arts were unique. Nanyu and Zhangzai had been staying inside the illusory formation. The Yao had been focused on Zhuai Mo and none of them had noticed them. Their sudden appearance, and their lightning attacks afterwards extinguished the thoughts of some Yao that wanted to benefit from the chaos. Nanyu panted lightly as she held the vine bough and stood next to Zhuai Mo. She looked warily at the surroundings. Zhangzai's forehead was covered in sweat. The gray-green mist on his body was much fainter than before. Zhuai Mo knew that this was the first time Nanyu and Zhangzai had cultivated these new Yao arts. After their actions, they were, undoubtedly, tired to the bone. Go back, have a good rest. Having recovered, Zhuai Mo said warmly. His hands moved together, and dozens of lights of various colors spilled forth like a storm. They entered the empty ground around him and disappeared. A trap. The hearts of everyone watching secretly shook. Nanyu and Zhangzai were at the end of their rope. They were just hanging on. Seeing the situation, they released a breath. Without dragging it out, they quickly left. Zhuai Mo coldly looked around. Many Yao lowered their heads, not daring to look at him. His eyes paused on Ming Yuzi. This unfamiliar Yao smiled slightly at him. He did not think about the meaning in Ming Juzi's smile and left the Wasteland Beast chessboard. The moment he left the Wasteland Beast chessboard, Zhuai Mo finally felt how serious his consciousness had been expended this time. He hurriedly entered meditation to recover. This sword formation is good and can help you comprehend sword essence. However, do not rely too much on external things. We are sword shio. What is sword shio? Other than the sword, there is nothing else. No matter if you comprehended sword essence or not, when you start cultivating the sword, your heart is like a sword billet. You need to continuously hammer it, grind it, cause it to become purer, and stronger. What can hammer and temper your sword hearts? Combat, continuous combat. Without combat, there are no sword shio. We sword shio come into the world with our sharp edges. Wei Xing's voice was not charismatic, but his determined gaze, and his indomitable voice made every sword shio's blood boil. Previously, they were like a headless snake due to the lack of a teacher. Now, Wei Xing's sudden appearance caused every sword shio to see hope. In other sects, disciples like Wei Xing were still disciples. But here, Wei Xing quickly became every sword shio's teacher. No one doubted any word that he said. He was a true sword shio. If this was in the past, everyone would feel that Wei Xing's cultivation methods were very dumb. Who could think that a Jindan Shouja would spend 4 hours each day slicing and thrusting like a beginner? But he quickly used reality to make everyone understand how important the basics were. He used sword moves from the stage of Lianqi, the Ling power of a Lianqi, and defeated all the experts of Vermilion Bird Camp, including Ma Fan. After such a fantastical competition, all of Vermilion Bird Camp sank into a deathly silence for multiple days. Wei Xing's performance completely overturned the common understandings that had formed over time. What Ling power, what sword moves, in front of Wei Xing, they were useless. He used reality to teach everyone their cultivation had gone in a wrong direction. Gradually, people started to copy Wei Xing's cultivation method, and methodically practiced the basic sword moves they had left behind a long time ago. Wei Xing's sword lecture hall was full of people daily. In the sword lecture hall, everyone gathered after class and discussed what Wei Xing had just spoken on. Teacher Wei is really great. Lei Ping did not cultivate a sword scripture, but he never missed any lecture. Wei Xing's words today really fit his appetite. The young Wei Xing was called Teacher Wei by everyone. But where is their combat? Someone muttered. It's not that there isn't combat, Ma Fan said in a deep voice. After he had been defeated by Wei Xing last time, he had reflected for a long time. His cultivation of the sword was unorthodox and he only had a half-complete understanding of many things which left behind hidden weaknesses. Now that Wei Xing had pointed every one of them out, he had benefited greatly. He would reflect and study every word that Wei Xing said many times. That's right, there are fiend souls outside, and even stronger fiend soul beasts. Aren't they the best opponents? Nian Lu inserted. Right. Let's get them. We need to plan, how about this, the pitiful fiend soul beasts. They had been living in relative peace and dominated this fiendish mist for thousands of years, but were facing a calamity due to one of Wei Xing's speeches. Originally, Xu Long, Awan, and the major fighters of guard camp were planning to attend the sword lecture hall. Even though what Wei Xing discussed was cultivating the sword, but many of the contents were also useful for them. However, this plan was mercilessly killed by Pu Yao. Were they joking? A branch of the honored Sky Yao, even if only in name, when was it ever someone else's turn to lecture them? To Pu Yao, this was a humiliation. That's right, it was a humiliation. Pu Yao, who was becoming more discontent the more he thought about it, instantly ordered guard camp into lockdown. What was good about the sword lecture hall? Speaking of cultivation, who can compare to Ge? Pu Yao smirked coldly inside. With a wave of his hand, the Mo cultivating hall was opened. Even though Pu was a Yao, he was familiar with the cultivation set that the Mo used. Lazily and smugly, he freely spoke. What he taught was long and not limited to hardship guard. If those Mo colonels of the Mo world sat here and listened, their hearts would have beat out of their chests. The hardship guards only listened docilely. Many parts caused them to have suddenly understandings. As to anything else, they didn't feel anything. Even if the camp door was tightly closed, but the actions of Vermilion Bird Camp caught the attention of Xu Long and the others. combat? Oh, it is essential. Pu Yao propped up his chin and blinked his bloody pupil. Compared to the sword show of Vermilion Bird Camp, the hardship guards of Guard Camp had an even more pitiful amount of combat experience. They were born show slaves, and were truly unorthodox. It could be said that innately, the hardship guards were greatly lacking compared to the sword show of Vermilion Bird Camp. If Guard Camp was suppressed by Vermilion Bird Camp, would there be any face for him? Even if it was Wei Sheng. Humph. Just a Jin Dan. How could the proud Pu Yao tolerate this result? Even more, there was the golden souls. After absorbing one golden soul, his soul had greatly stabilized. Other than releasing a breath, he desired the remaining golden souls even more. At this point, he had to prove his value. There was no way around it. This student of his was the utmost pragmatic. Pu Yao aimed at those fiend soul beasts. He did not have any intentions of discussion. He waved his hand and sent out the order. Guard Camp started to move. Gong Sun Cha did not know anything of what was happening at the campsite. Wei Sheng's arrival did not affect him greatly. When he had left Wukong Mountain, he had just entered the sect for a few months, and he did not have many attachments to Wukong's sword sect. He had only ever heard the name of the eldest Shixiang Wei Sheng, and it was the first time he had seen the real person. At this time, his entire body was red like a boiled shrimp. His appearance was handsome to start with, and he had the shyness and bashfulness unique to youths. With his entire body red at this time, he seemed even more adorable. His soul was trembling ferociously. When the bead had entered his mouth, the flooding soul-base source was like a tide and almost swallowed him. His soul was like a leaf struggling on a great wave. If it was a normal person, their first thought in this situation would be to protect themselves. But Gong Sun Cha was vicious and decisive. At the very first moment, he started a suicidal method of absorbing. As he struggled, he continuously swallowed soul-base source to strengthen his own body. The level of danger in this was the most dangerous of Gong Sun Cha's entire cultivation. Gong Sun Cha's cultivation was the lowest of everyone. But in terms of mental resolve, even Zhua Mo underestimated how strong Gong Sun Cha's resolve was. From the moment he met the concept of battle, he had stubbornly stood against Pu Yao's repeated abuse. In that period, Pu Yao did not teach him at all. Gong Sun Cha needed to find the patterns from his continuous failures. There was no motivation, no support, only failure. The cruelest nurturing method had formed Gong Sun Cha. This had formed Lil Miss vicious and cruel battle style, but there were only a few that knew he was even crueler to himself. He was a weirdo with a weak body, a low cultivation but a strong and vicious inner heart. To him, this was just another battle. The dangerous situation did not make him waver. His resolve that had been tempered by Pu Yao's countless abuse was as steady as rock. What he was most skilled at was finding that one sliver of opportunity in a hopeless situation. The tsunami-like blow to his soul caused him to waver and almost fall, but he was extremely calm as he swallowed threads of soul-base source. His consciousness quickly grew and it became even easier. He seemed to direct his consciousness like he directed Vermilion Bird Camp. Flank, deep thrust, circle, and annihilate. This was the method he was most familiar with, and he easily used it. He was like a cunning wolf wandering. When he saw the chance, he would leapt and tear a bite off. The soul-base source was so vast, and he was so weak. He did not panic. It was the opposite. He was very excited because he found the exhilaration of battle. This exhilaration was like an addictive poison, and intoxicated him. He gradually took control of the situation. His consciousness became increasingly stronger. Due to this, his calculations became even more precise, and his consciousness easier to control. They were like the fresh greenhorns that quickly turned to elite soldiers. Gradually, a thread of understanding came. This understanding became clearer, so clear it seemed to be held behind a paper window. If he could poke through, he could see its true appearance. His consciousness was like a twister pulling the wind that swallowed the last thread of the soul-base source. Pia, it was like something had broken, and also something had erupted. He stood on the battlefield that held no person, his mind abnormally clear. Ha, so this was what it meant to be a battle general. Chapter 377, Qinghua Shui, Two Kinds of High-Level Yao Arts. Ming Ju Zi studied the recording Yao art and searched mentally what Yao arts these two were. He knew at some details about the majority of high-level Yao arts. It had to be said this was not 3,000 years ago. High-level Yao arts were no longer common. However, no matter how long he thought for, he could not identify the origins of these two Yao arts. His curiosity increased. His first idea was this a new kind of Yao art? In the Great War 3,000 years ago, even though large numbers of Yao arts had been lost, the low and intermediate Yao arts were still passed down untouched. After 3,000 years of development, each Yao art house had focused their efforts to create new Yao arts, and those famed houses all focused on creating new high-level Yao arts. Even those Sky Yao were working towards the same goal. The development of Yao arts had reached a new era of creativity. In these years, new high-level Yao arts had been continuously invented. This had become one of the measures to judge a Yao art house. Without a high-level Yao art of their own, a Yao art house could not push into the ranks of famed houses. Was these high-level Yao arts that were created by a Yao art house? This was the most plausible hypothesis. But Ming Ju Zi's intuition told him it was not like that. Xiao Moge's origins had always been a mystery, but he had a completely different quality to the Yao that came from Yao art houses. Ming Ju Zi was confident in his eyes. When he saw Xiao Mo for the first time, this feeling was very strong. Maybe it was an ancient high-level Yao art that had been lost. Ming Ju Zi decided to do deep research. Qinghua Zong Shui felt he was going crazy. Xiao Moge's rudeness infuriated him. Even that idiotic nobody was so impolite to him. When had the Yao of the Blue Flower family been treated so rudely? But damn it, the Blue Flower was useless against that idiotic bastard. Qinghua Zong Shui tightly balled his fists, his eyes sprouting fire. Why? Why were the Blue Flowers useless against the idiot? Did the Blue Flower have some fatal weakness? Impossible. The reason that the Blue Flower family had such status was due to this Blue Flower. This idea that suddenly came was like a poisonous vine that creeped over his mind. Without knowing it, his face became ashen, and his back soaked. No. There definitely was not a problem with the Blue Flower. It definitely was that he had incorrectly cultivated somehow. Yes. It definitely was like that. His heart tightened again. Had something gone wrong with his cultivation? Brother, what is it? Qinghua Shui, who coincidentally pushed open the door to come and saw Qinghua Zong Shui's pale face and jumped in fright. I'm fine, Qinghua Zong Shui said with a forced smile. But his voice was dry and rough, and caused the concern on Qinghua Shui's face to grow. Qinghua Shui's body was tall and about the same as Qinghua Zong Shui. The slightly blue skin had a fine glossy sheen and contrasted beautifully against the amber eyes. It was unspeakably moving. Especially her long and curled eyelashes that evoked one's pity. Is brother still angry at that Xiao Mo? Qinghua Shui's voice was warm and seemed to hold a special power. Qinghua Zong Shui quickly calmed down. Qinghua Zong Shui hesitated for a moment, but when he recalled that poisonous thought, he couldn't help but say, Sister, is my Blue Flower not being cultivated properly? Qinghua Shui was slightly astonished. Why does brother have such a strange idea? Today, I met a person in the wasteland beast chessboard. He wasn't afraid of the Blue Flower at all. I had sent out 12 blue flowers, each hit his body but nothing happened to him. Traces of terror showed in Qinghua Zong Shui's gaze. Ah! Qinghua Shui was very shocked, but when she saw Qinghua Zong Shui's gaze full of terror and dispiritedness, she quickly composed herself. After thinking for a moment, she slowly opened, "The world is great, and has all kinds of wonders. Even the Forbidden Knight, of the Night Clan doesn't dare to say that it is undefeatable. Does brother remember what happened 2 years ago?" Qinghua Zong Shui's expression instantly relaxed. "Our cultivation of blue flower lacks the last 3 levels, but there are no problems." Qinghua Shui's voice was confidence. Qinghua Zong Shui was relieved of his worries. He felt his younger sister was right, and mocked himself inside for having a weak mentality. The two were siblings from the same father but of different mothers. However, they had a great relationship. Qinghua Shui was the younger sister, but she was very intelligent, and Qinghua Zong Shui respected her from a young age, especially in the area of cultivation. Even though Qinghua Zong Shui was a member of the Genius Alliance, he had no thoughts of pride in front of his younger sister. He knew of his younger sister's talents in cultivation. From very young, he would ask help from his sister whenever he encountered a problem in cultivation. But his sister did not like conflict, and never used Yao arts in front of other people. Even their father did not know of his sister's talent in cultivating blue flower. Almost no one knew the name of Qinghua Shui. Their declining family was a branch family of the blue flower family. In the eyes of others, their branch had started to prosper after Qinghua Zong Shui entered the Genius Alliance. Only Qinghua Zong Shui himself knew that the one with the most potential of their branch was not him. Even he did not know just how strong his younger sister was. But he was used to trusting Qinghua Shui from a young age. Over time, all the hopes of the family had been placed on his shoulders. He was sensitive and slightly moody, he would frequently become irritated and insecure. But in front of his sister, he would unconsciously feel at peace. The air around his sister seemed to have the taste of peace. Since sister said there wasn't a problem, then there definitely was not a problem. Brother has had to deal with too much pressure recently, Qinghua Shui urged in a soft voice. Brother shouldn't care too much about Xiao Mo Gu. This male is arrogant in conduct, making enemies everywhere. He would not have a good ending. Brothers, blue flower, is at a crucial time. If you can progress another step, your cultivation would truly reach a vast place. Sister is right, I forced myself into a dead end. Qinghua Zong Shui said. Thinking about how he seemed disturbed in this recent while, he couldn't help but feel shame. Qinghua Shui smiled sweetly. Then I'm going out to play. Finishing, she floated away like a blue snowflake. Qinghua Zong Shui looked at his younger sister's back and felt warm in his heart. Since sister liked a peaceful life, then as her older brother, he needed to work harder. Qinghua Shui returned to her room and sat in thought silently for a moment. Coldness suddenly came into the amber eyes. Xiao Mo Gu, Nenyu opened her eyes, and felt her mind was unspeakably content and fulfilled. There was no exhaustion at all. Joy floated into her mind. No wonder, South Sky Arrow art, was the inherited Yao art of her clan, it really was powerful. Her mind moved slightly, a purple light flashed at her fingertips and a 3-cun vine arrow appeared. The small and exquisite vine arrow was made from 2 slender green vines interwoven together. At the tail were 3 green and crisp leaves. It was very charming. The vine arrow was very soft yet strong. She could fold it however she wished and it would not break. Playing with the vine arrow, her thoughts wandered. She had not secretly passed the little Yao arts and other things Darren had taught her onto her clansmen. Without Darren's permission, she definitely would not share any of it. She also did not have those intentions. Her idea was to learn some skills. In the future, she could earn more money and help her clan members have a good life. But when she learned this, South Sky Arrow art, she had the urge to pass it to her clan members. The South Sky Arrow art was far too suited to the Wisteria clan. It was just the first time she cultivated it, and her consciousness had grown by 1/10. This degree of improvement almost scared her. If this improvement was maintained over the long term, then the power of the Yao art was tangible. In the Wasteland Beast chessboard yesterday, how many enemies had she destroyed? 10. Before this, it was an unimaginable feat to her. Also, this was just her first time cultivating it. Thinking about it now, the ancient records of South Sky Arrow art of her clan were not exaggerating when they talked about its power. Fortunately, Darren allowed her to pass South Sky Arrow art to her clan members. Thinking about this, her heart was filled with gratefulness. She could see a great and open path in front of her and her clan. Sometimes, she couldn't help but feel this was unreal. The poor and harsh life she previously had faced seemed to be just yesterday. No matter which reason it originated from, she could be grateful to Darren. She propped up her chin. Darren was so powerful, so strong, she could not be a burden on Darren. She definitely had to work on her cultivation. If she could help Darren in the future, then it would be even more perfect. Ooh, how could she help Darren? Her eyes lit up. Zhuemo was furiously cultivating Yao arts. At the side, a Goe looked on with a wooden expression. The light of the Yao arts reflected on her face, and added another thread of light to her eyes. Lil fire curiously circled from the side. It would sometimes approach very close to the light on Zhuemo's hands. Lil Pagoda continuously nudged at Lil fire. It was unmoved, and only looked curiously at the Yao arts on Zhuemo's hands. Lil Pagoda could only dejectedly fly back into a Gue's arms and snuggle around. Yao arts. Last time in the Wasteland Beast chessboard, he had almost been tripped up by that group of Yao. Zhuemo was greatly stimulated. Damn it! If the tiger didn't roar, they mistook it for a sick cat. Wasn't it just Yao arts? Zhuemo resolved inside that he won't let go of those people when he went next time. Last time, if it wasn't for the Wasteland Beast that had helped him, he may have been thrown out immediately. There was nothing major about being thrown out, but it was a great loss of face. Xiao Mo Gu was a personage right now. How could face be lost? If he could not suppress this terrible conduct, how could it show Xiao Moge's power? Yet he did not know. Just as he buried his hard and work on Yao arts, a major event happened. Chapter 378, Black Smoke. Yao's suggestion. Feng Xingzi had reconstructed the third prison to be renamed Wind Song. This event created more noise than Zhuemo reconstructing the Wasteland Beast chessboard. The first prison was just the ground of little Yao that just entered Yao art houses. If it wasn't that it had been a long time since the first prison's prison-breaking battle had been won, it wouldn't have been any news at all. But the third prison was completely different. The Yao that cultivated in the third presian were usually in the later stages of spirit planting, and the beginning stages of Yin spirit. The difficulty in reconstructing the third prison was several magnitudes greater than reconstructing the first prison. Feng Xinz was a high-level supervisor of the Genius Alliance, and based on the accomplishments from this battle, he had successfully entered the Elder Council of the Genius Alliance. Those that had discussed Xiao Mo Gu versus the Genius Alliance were now collectively silent. The Genius Alliance used action to prove how laughable it was to compare Xiao Mo Gu and the Genius Alliance together. However, Zhuemo did not feel that his troubles had lessened. This was due to the bounties from the large Yao markets. The bounty to kill him once in the 10-finger prison had grown from 5 million to 8 million. What made him even more speechless was that it did not limit the number of times. The enormous sum made Zhuemo's eyes turn red. He turned to Nanyu and said, "How about you all try to kill me and take the recording Yao art to get the bounty, then we can split it." Nanyu and Sangzai's expressions were like they had swallowed a fly, and they did not know what to say. So much money. Zhuemo's eyes were bright as he furiously rubbed his hands together. Nan Yu and Sang Zhe stalwartly helped him destroy the enemies that came like moths to a flame. They were becoming familiar with their new Yao arts. Taking turns and attacking, they were swift and efficient. A short while later, the orange-haired Yao excitedly ran over with the black smoke Yao. "Brother, the Genius Alliance broke the third prison." The orange-haired Yao shouted loudly when he saw Zwayamo, "We cannot submit. Brother, go break the third prison. Show the Genius Alliance your power." Nan Yu and Sang Zhe's faces grew even darker. The black smoke Yao behind the orange-haired Yao couldn't help but have an awkward expression and show an apologetic expression to the two Yao. Zwayamo was unconcerned. "Not going." "Why not?" The orange-haired Yao gaped, his face disbelieving. "There's no money." Zwayamo rubbed his hands. "That is true." The orange-haired Yao stilled, thought and then nodded in agreement. "Brother, why don't you kill me, and then we split the money?" Zwayamo brought up the old topic and looked with desire at the orange-haired Yao. "This idea is good." The orange-haired Yao then said with some bashfulness, "But I am loyal Yao, how can I kill my brother?" "That's fine, just remember to give me a bigger portion." Zwayamo waved his hand carelessly. Sang Zhe finally could not resist. "Darren, there are many ways of making money, do not humiliate yourself so." Heavens! He could not think of it. If Darren really used this method to make money, everyone would collapse from laughter. Darren's face was thick enough, and could dismiss all kinds of criticism, but he could not. Behind him was the entire Grey clan. Darren's idea made him shiver. Too scary. No, he had to stop Darren's insane idea. Seeing Zwamo's unaffected face, he almost cried. "Darren, if you need money, I'll give it to you, alright? How much money do you have?" Zwamo's face was full of disdain and caused him to choke. The black smoke male suddenly spoke, "Actually, I have a method." "Say it, say it." The orange-haired Yao was very excited. The black smoke male slowly spoke and caused everyone to become silent. "Smokey, you are too devious." The orange-haired Yao exclaimed in shock, and then his expression became ecstatic. He turned and asked Zwayamo, "Brother, is this idea great or what?" Zwayamo didn't think and nodded. "Do it." The most recent news. Just after Feng Xinz reconstructed the third prison, Xiao Mo has also made a move. Xiao Mo has put down a stage in the Wasteland Beast chessboard prison. He has announced he will accept any challenge. The challenger only needs to pay a fee of 50,000, and can receive a preliminary qualification of challenge. Those that receive the preliminary qualification will need to go through a preliminary battle. Those that win can directly challenge Xiao Mo. Those that pay 200,000 don't need to go through a preliminary round and can directly challenge Xiao Mo. Ji Li Yu's complexion was black, and she remained silent. On the side, Ji Cheng's expression was strange, but he closed his mouth tightly. He knew his sister was at the point of erupting. He didn't dare to make a sound at this time. He was full of respect towards Xiao Mo right now. No matter how powerful this guy was, he definitely had a thick face and black heart to dare to do something like this. The most extreme of extremes. A personage among personages. He wanted to go and acquaint himself. However, when he saw old Sis' eyes that seemed to sprout fire, he forcibly suppressed this impulse. "Very good." Ji Li Yu's voice as it was forced through her teeth was like the cold wind in the deep of winter. "But will he manage to survive?" Ji Cheng shook. Old Sis was angry. "Congratulations, Elder Feng." "Congratulations, Elder Feng." Another supervisor bowed to Feng Xinz, unable to disguise the envy on his face and a hint of fawning. Feng Xinz had become the newest elder of the Genius Alliance Elder Council. The status of the two were completely different. Congratulatory greetings came from the surroundings. Feng Xinz had a humble smile on his face. Thanks. He had come to bid farewell to everyone. After he reconstructed the third prison, the discussions about the Genius Alliance had abruptly stopped. All the major Yao channels had stopped their scorn and praised the power of the Genius Alliance. The enormous potential he displayed was very well favored by the higher levels. Even the leader of the Genius Alliance, Ming Yuyi, had on multiple occasions, expressed her admiration. Feng Xinz patiently bid farewell with every supervisor and member before leaving. Darren, I heard that the main division has countless Yao arts, including sky and earth levels, is it true? Xiao Jin blinked her adorable eyes and was full of anticipation. She was Feng Xinz's follower, growing up with Feng Xinz like a sibling. Supposedly. Feng Xinz was looking into the distance. He turned and replied with a smile. That's wonderful. In the future, Darren will have sky-level Yao arts. Xiao Jin was extremely happy. Feng Xinz gave another slight smile but did not speak. Darren, there is a very fun matter. That Xiao Mo Gu actually put up a stage, and is taking fees. How can there be such a greedy Yao in the world? Xiao Jin's round face was filled with shock. Feng Xinz saw Xiao Jin's adorable appearance and couldn't help but rub her head. Xiao Jin's face wrinkled and she said discontentedly, Darren, you messed up Xiao Jin's hair again. Ha! Feng Xinz laughed freely. Let's go. Darren, wait for me. Do you think we are going to get money? Nanyu asked Sangze uncertainly. I don't know. Tsang's mood was low and he almost seemed to cry. The Grey clan had been in decline for a long time, and resorted to staying in an out-of-the-way place, but it was an ancient clan that had guarded the golden tree. When had they done such embarrassing things? He was the junior clan leader, and he was going to be clan leader in the future. But he did not display any temper at all. His objections in front of Darren's decisiveness was as weak as the breath of an ant. Darren had a decisive presence, his eyes filled with domination, a great hero. Sangze admired him inside, but that quality of greediness. Nanyu did not notice Sangze's low mood and was eager. I hadn't expected that black ghost with such an ordinary appearance to have such evil ideas. So black. But this idea is really good. I hope we can earn a lot this time. The Wisteria clan of the South Sky had declined far more than the Grey clan. After struggling at the lowest level of society for such a long time, they had long ago forgotten their past glory and the pride of a great clan. Such a taxing life had taught Nanyu the difficulty of survival and the importance of money. Due to this, she was in strong agreement with the Black Smoke Yao's idea. To be able to get money honestly, and to resolve trouble at the same time, the Black Smoke Male's idea fits Mo's intentions very well. Nanyu, pay attention to taking in the money. Only those that have paid have the qualifications. Mo was like an experienced battle general calmly directing, it would be best to hire a Yao for the accounts. Oh, the first round, Sangze is up first. I'm up first. The orange-haired Yao impatiently jumped out. He put his hands on his waist and laughed. Haha, today is the day I become famous. You need to keep your eyes open and watch how I beat down all of them. Mo did not object. The orange-haired Yao's strange physique which could not be killed made him the best choice for the first round. However, since they were paying, he naturally had to provide the best service. Ooh, the prison battlefield should be changed. Compared to other places, the intimate presence of the battlefield was greater. What reassured Mo the most was that barely discernible presence of the wasteland beast. The strength of the wasteland beast was branded into his heart. He had asked Pu Yao about the wasteland beast but Pu Yao had been silent each time. Mo was used to Pu Yao's secretiveness. This guy had too many secrets. Okay, let all those secrets and old anix go to hell, what GE loves is Jingshire. Mo was full of motivation. The prison battlefield was completely transformed. This place had become Zhuo Mo's home territory. Compared to the peace outside, the prison battlefield was full of danger with each step. Lots of Yao arts in the style of Little Mo Gu were swimming about. If it touched anything the slightest bit, then the successive attacks were like debtors being chased by creditors. To guarantee that only Yao that had paid the fee could enter, Zhuo Mo had used the prison battlefield to its limits. The densely packed Yao arts made even his scalp prickle. Zhuo Mo even put down large amounts of illusory formations in the pathway that he left behind. This weren't the low-level things like ice blade illusory formations. This was a big illusory formation he had spent 4 hours to finish. The Yao arts inside the prison battlefield were obedient in his hands. He could merge them into the illusory formation as he wished. After the illusory formation was complete, he was well satisfied. If they planned on forcing their way in, wait to feel the pain. Zhuo Mo's confidence in formations was much stronger than his confidence in his half-learned Yao arts. Zhuo Mo's beautiful illusory formation shocked Nan Yu and the other Yao. The admiration in their eyes was like a flood. Even the black smoke Yao that had a black face and a black heart was very astonished. In the Yao world, the path of formations was famed for its difficulty in comprehension. There were very few Yao that were skilled in formations. Xiao Mo Gu was skilled in formations. A thread of strangeness flashed across the eyes of the black smoke Yao. Chapter 379, Tide of Battle. Nan Yu really found a Yao to come collect the money, her good friend Hong. Only things like souls could enter the 10-finger prison, money could not be taken in. But the method of transactions inside 10-finger prison had developed over the years, and everyone had naturally found a method. There were merchants that specialized in this kind of business. One only needed to go to these merchants to buy a type of soul that had a special soul imprint with money. In the 10-finger prison, these souls with special Yao art imprints were akin to money. Only wealthy merchants could be involved in this kind of business. The souls that were used as money were seed souls born from special Yao trees. The seed souls each merchant family used were different, and the spiritual imprint on the seed souls could effectively stop fraud. Some old businesses had a good reputation in this field. What Hong was hired to collect was this kind of seed soul. The little girl was a daring one. In the beginning, she had been scared to do Zhuo Mo's reputation, but she quickly became excited. When she saw the endless stream of people registering, she became even more excited. Zhang Zhe looked at the packed mass of registrants. His vision blackened and he almost fainted. When he saw the major Yao channels with their logos, his scalp prickled and his consciousness almost shattered. No, he hopelessly shouted in silence from the bottom of his heart. Looking over it all the Yao channels that he had heard of were present, and there were even many he had not heard of. There is a bit too many, the black smoke Yao said weakly. He swallowed. The amount of registrants far surpassed his expectations. A hint of regret formed. They had played it too big this time. The orange-haired Yao wasn't nervous at all. He was very motivated, laughing with his hands on his hips. Ha 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 ha, this is fated to be the day that I become famous. I will quickly surpass you, brother, feel the great pressure. Do not be nervous, I'm very loyal, but I won't let you off. Zhuo Mo did not hear the orange-haired Yao's words at all. There was only a Jingshi ocean in his eyes, vast and rippling with an attractive light. Ooh, it was enchanting. By Zhuo Mo's side, Nan Yu was slightly excited. She balled her fists, and made a resolution. She had to make money for Darren. Who could have thought of it? Who could have thought of it? Just after Feng Xinz reconstructed the third prison, just as everyone is maintaining their silence due to their previous scorn of the Genius Alliance, Xiao Mo Gu made a move no one expected. This matter has been deflected dramatically into a new direction. No matter how powerful the Genius Alliance is, Miss Ji Liu, and Mr. Qinghua Zhang Shui have all tripped when facing Xiao Mo Gu, and this blemish cannot be erased. At this time, people finally remember that the Genius Alliance has their eyes at the top of their heads did not get their face back from Xiao Mo Gu. Of course, maybe Miss Ji Li Yu and Mr. Qinghua Zhang Shui cannot represent the Genius Alliance. If the two sides are facing off, then Xiao Mo's move this time is shockingly sharp. Wearing a deep blue mask was covered with silver flower patterns and filled with a strange presence. At this moment, the eyes behind the mask were filled with coldness. Murderous intent flashed across the eyes, sharp as a blade's edge, but that pair of amber eyes quickly became calm like a deep lake. Xiao Mo Gu, a slow and light sigh sounded behind the mask like tendrils of smoke and did not dissipate for a long time. Her steps were slow, her upper body not moving at all as though she was sliding on ice. Her appearance was unspeakably elegant and ethereal. She glanced at the registration area that was tightly packed before turning to look at the completely transformed prison battlefield. A light sound came from behind the mask. There was a thread of surprise in her eyes. Formations. Xiao Mo Gu was actually skilled in formations. She noted it down inside. After studying outside the prison battlefield for a few moments, she turned and walked towards the registration spot. Wherever she passed, the crowd seemed to be moved aside by an invisible hand and created a passageway. Some Yao with fiery tempers turned and prepared to swear. When they saw the dark blue mask, their expressions changed, and the words that had reached their mouths were swallowed back down. Anything that could be brought into the 10-finger prison were treasures. On this Yao's face was a soul mask. It was an extremely rare treasure. Those that possessed such a great treasure, if they were not rich, they were powerful. And when they saw the streaming figure of the masked female Yao, their hearts jumped. They recognized power. Just like this, the masked female Yao did not encounter any resistance and walked directly in front of Hong. You want to register? Hong also noticed this unusual female Yao and raised her head to ask. Yes. It was possible to hear from the voice coming from behind the mask, that this was a female Yao. She threw out a seed soul. Hong took it and was slightly surprised. 200,000. You want to make a direct challenge? Is it not possible? The masked female Yao asked. Pausing, Hong nodded hurriedly. Possible, possible. Then she shouted towards the inside of the formation, Darren, there is a person who is challenging you directly. After shouting, she said to the female Yao, you can go in. Don't worry, the formation will not attack you. The masked female Yao walked steadily inside the prison battlefield. She did not seem to fear those strangely changing formations at all. Formations. Xiao Mo Gu actually knows formations. Su Wei turned his face with astonishment. This guy does have some skills. I remember you've always had an interest in formations. You didn't come to such a low-level place like the first prison just for this. And pulling me along as well. Bro, I'm very busy. Ming Ju Zi shook his head. I have only found out today that he knows formations. This guy is very strange. He said with deep meaning, he can control this prison. What? Su Wei's eyes widened suddenly. That's impossible. He knew what controlling a prison meant. Look at the prison battlefield. Ming Ju Zi pointed at the completely transformed prison battlefield. This place has completely changed. That doesn't mean anything. Su Wei did not believe it. His head shook like a rattle drum. He reconstructed this prison and naturally has the home advantage. This degree of transformation does not prove anything. Ming Ju Zi did not argue. You'll understand later. He thought back to the recording Yao arts that he had been studying in recent days. He had bought them for a high price from a little Yao called Jin Zhen. Jin Zhen had been involved in attacking Xiao Mo Gu that day, and the recording Yao art recorded everything he had encountered that day. The deep and cryptic Yao art problems on each pillar of the dazzling cage of light astonished him. He knew that Su Wei and the others didn't even have any attentions to look at a little Yao that was muddling through the first prison. Previously, Su Wei had mocked him for wasting time on such a little personage, but as he studied more, the shock and puzzlement in Ming Ju Zi's heart accumulated. There were too many places that he could not understand and think through. He had read through a large amount of information to find something similar to the high-level Yao arts that the two followers of Xiao Mo Gu had used that day. This discovery instantly attracted his attention, because these high-level Yao arts that were possibly a match were both lost a long time ago. He also researched the background of Xiao Moge's two followers. What was worth celebrating was that while Xiao Moge's origins were unknown, it was not hard to find the origins of the two followers. The male Yao was from the Grey Clan, a clan that had declined. The female Yao came from the South Sky Wisteria clan, a Yao clan that was almost extinct. The intelligent Ming Ju Zi quickly found something worthy of deep thought. Both the Grey Clan and the South Sky Arrow clan were Yao clans that could be traced back to 3,000 years ago. The reason that the high-level Yao arts of the two clans were lost were strangely the same: they were lost in the Great War 3,000 years ago. The formations in front of him looked like a Shouja's seal formations. These unusual traces caused Xiao Mo Gu to become even more mysterious. But he did not tell any of this to Su Wei. There was too much speculations. He also believed that Xiao Mo Gu would shock Su Wei greatly. Su Wei was also wondering inside. Even though Ming Ju Zi did not focus on what he should be doing some of the time, but his intuition far surpassed normal Yao. Did this Xiao Mo Gu really have something strange about him? Just at this time, he saw a familiar figure walking towards the prison battlefield from the corner of his eyes. His expression instantly became strange. Yu Zi Zhou has come as well. Is this person going to go up? Ming Ju Zi saw that figure and stilled. Big sis, you really aren't going to send someone? Ji Qing suppressed the impulse to laugh and asked Ji Li Yu seriously. Ji Li Yu lightly snorted. Such a small person, is he worthy of my attention? He besmirched our Ji family's reputation. How can we let him off? Ji Qing pretended to be indignant as he said. Let him off. Ji Li Yu giggled. He will quickly get a taste of trouble. Ji Qing hurriedly asked. Does sis have some insider information? You want to know? Ji Li Yu raised her eyelids. Want to know, want to know. Ji Qing nodded rapidly. He was very curious. He had originally thought that old sis was going to send an expert to teach this guy a lesson. The Ji family did not lack for experts. Who would have expected that old sis had ordered the clansmen not to go make trouble for Xiao Mo Gu? If he hadn't seen old sis look as though she wanted to eat Xiao Mo Gu raw, he would have thought that old sis was interested in Xiao Mo Gu. I'm thirsty. Get me some heart-moistening fruits, Ji Li Yu casually said. I knew it. It's like this every time, Ji Qing muttered. He obediently went to get the heart-moistening fruits and put them in front of old sis. Ji Li Yu opened a heart-moistening fruit. The glistening and tender flesh of the fruit and her long and white fingers formed a beautiful picture. Yu Ji Zhou has pursued me for so many years. How can he let go of such a chance as this? Taking a small bite of the heart-moistening fruit, Ji Li Yu's expression was like a child eating candy in secret. Even though I do not like him, he is a good subordinate. Chapter 380, The Blue Flowers of Qinghua. Shuai Mo was waiting for the first person to directly challenge him. Even though he did not know how much 200,000 in the Yao world was in terms of Jingshi, but from the responses of Nan Yu and the others, he could see it wasn't a small sum. He really could not understand it. If it was him, would he spend such a considerable sum of Jingshi to have a fight with someone else? Didn't they have anything else they could do? But there were so many registrants. For the bounty? Or for one mole? Mo was very surprised by the reach of one mole's influence. He thought back to the interaction that day. Other than using an illusory art the moment they met, he did not feel there was anything special about one mole. When Mo saw the challenger clearly, he paused and then asked Pu Yao, "Pu, how can there be masks in the 10-finger prison? What is strange about that?" Pu Yao was discontent at being interrupted while teaching the guard camp. He said impatiently, "Golden souls can be brought in, it's natural other things can also be brought in." "Right, I'm very busy, don't bother me." Burning the bridge after crossing the river. Mo muttered inside. Before he got the golden soul, this guy's attitude was great. The moment he got it, he instantly made a 180-degree turn. Mo expressed deep disdain at Pu Yao's horrid conduct. His gaze landed on the blue mask of the other person, and felt this object was very useful. He hadn't come to the 10-finger prison to make money. He needed to think of a way to find information on the Battle of Sealed Extinction. Thinking about his present situation, the joy in Mo's heart at making money faded greatly. Start. Mo focused. It was not fun to divide one's attention during a fight. Qinghua Shui carefully examined Xiao Mo Gu in front of her. The other's eyes were peaceful and was not arrogant like the Xiao Mo Gu of the rumors. She remained silent and threw this question to the back of her mind. Since she had already entered the battlefield, why think of all these details? She stepped forward, and the silent pupils suddenly lit up with a pressuring light. The female Yao that had been peaceful and serene like a lady was like a long sword that was unsheathed from its scabbard. The cold icy presence was like an invisible wave that rushed towards Mo's heart wavered. His eyes became serious and he also stepped forward with his right foot. The presence around him also changed. It was like the wind that blew from the desert, carrying a heart-shaking viciousness that rushed up without fear. Pia pia pia. Countless sparks formed like popcorn between the two. The light in Qinghua Shui's eyes grew, so bright that one could not stare directly at it. Since she was very little, she had started to practice blue flower. This had become a routine of her life and she had never stopped. She didn't even know what level she had reached with her blue flower. Was it high or low? This was the first time she fought, and it was the first time she channeled blue flower, without holding back. An unprecedented feeling flooded out of her body. The familiar power of blue flower seemed slightly strange to her. Under the stimulation of this domineering yet unfamiliar power, a strong yet unfamiliar feeling formed as though something was moving inside her heart. She had a strong sense she could do it. Under the stimulation of this emotion, she was filled with anticipation towards the upcoming battle. She felt like there was a monster hiding in her heart that revealed its great horns at this time. Anticipation, terror, and wonder all mixed together causing her to be briefly dazed. When she refocused, she found a familiar light in her hand. Blue flower. When Mo saw that blue flower, his pupils suddenly shrunk. Damn it, a Yao from the blue flower family. He had almost tripped up on the blue flower that Qinghua Shui had released. If it wasn't that the orange-haired Yao could naturally suppress the blue flower, it was uncertain what the outcome would have been. Mo's figure suddenly retreated. Usual Yao arts were of no use against the blue flower. As he retreated, his eyes were tightly locked onto this blue flower. A strong feeling of danger formed. The hairs on his body stood up on end. This blue flower was even more beautiful and complete than the one Qinghua Shui had released, and even more dangerous. The mask-wearing female Yao was more powerful than Qinghua Shui. When Mo noticed a second blue flower forming on Qinghua Shui's hand, his eyelids couldn't help but jump. If he kept on retreating, as the number of blue flowers increased, his situation would become increasingly dangerous. Thinking about this, Mo gritted his teeth. A gold light flashed at his feet and he suddenly charged forward. With such urgency, he did not hold anything back. The gold light flashed on his feet and his figure moved like lightning. To capture the group, capture the leader first. Experienced in combat, Zhuemo instantly made a decision. Since the blue flower was hard to defeat, then he would directly attack the true body. Zhuemo's figure disappeared from where he stood and appeared like a ghost in front of Qinghua Shui. The hard lightning covering his hand crackled and long arcing streaks of electricity danced as his fist chopped towards Qinghua Shui's head like an axe of lightning. The domineering presence of the hard lightning caused terror to form in Qinghua Shui's heart. But this bit of terror was washed away by the excitement that came after. She elegantly let go of the blue flower in her hand. The blue flower floated in front of her and suddenly gave a dazzling light. Zhuemo felt as though his blow was stopped by a flexible yet soft invisible wall. The domineering and savage young fiend hard lightning was forcibly stopped. Zhuemo knew the situation was not good and he quickly reacted. His open palm shifting to a crane strike and a rampaging young fiend hard lightning steamed out of Zhuemo's fingertips. Boom! The blinding silver and blue lights exploded between the two people. The flooding power suddenly lost control and swept in all directions. The two figures were separated. The blue flower in front of Qinghua Shui had disappeared, and Zhuemo looked to be in a sorry state with many dots of blue on his body. His hanging right arm was continuously trembling. He looked at the other. The young fiend hard lightning he had just used was the strongest he could create, but it still was unable to harm the other. In this short round, he was able to judge that the female Yao was much stronger than Qinghua Zong Shui. The two were not on the same level. Such a powerful Yao art. However, he had not been defeated. Seeing another blue flower flying at him out of the corner of his eye, Zhuemo's figure flashed and he disappeared from where he stood again. The blue flower was powerful, but it was not without its weak spots. Zhuemo's mind was clear. He did not rest as he moved at high speeds, and released 12 young fiend hard lightning blows in succession. The 12 young fiend hard lightning charged at Qinghua Shui from all directions. It was a pity that he could not cultivate South Sky arrow art. The vine arrows that Nan Yu shot were faster than young fiend hard lightning. It was the first time Qinghua Shui had ever fought, but she displayed extraordinary talent at combat. In a moment she was surrounded, but Qinghua Shui did not panic at all. She took a deep breath and a clear shout came from under the mask, blue flower clothes. Before her shout was complete, tendrils of blue vines of light appeared on her body. The blue vines of light spread and wrapped around her legs, then her waist, and then her arms. In a blink, the blue vines covered her entire body like a blue flower closing its bud. Under the blows of the young fiend hard lightning, Qinghua Shui covered in the blue flower was like a weak flower in a storm, swaying and appeared ready to break at any moment. The 12 young fiend hard lightning smashed on Qinghua Shui's body like explosive raindrops. Hiss hiss hiss. It was like a net of lightning had been spread over Qinghua Shui, who was barely discernible inside the blue flower. Countless silver snakes moved about. The silver electricity lit up Qinghua Shui's amber eyes and they were full of the desire to fight. Qinghua Shui was untouched. The hard lightning arcing on her body quickly weakened and the vines of light tightly wrapped around her body brightened like they were being fed nutrients and water. The vines had actually absorbed the hard lightning completely. Zhuemo inhaled sharply. His scalp prickled. Such a weird Yao art. The situation was becoming worse. The speed of the blue flower was not fast, but its defensive power was also unable to be defeated. There were no weaknesses. He could almost predict what was waiting for him. The other only needed to continue releasing blue flowers. That day, Qinghua Zong Shui had released dozens of blue flowers in one go. With the power of this mask-wearing female Yao, it probably was not difficult for her to release hundreds. If the number of blue flowers increased, the space that he could utilize to dodge would decrease. Then he would be in danger. Damn it! Zhuemo's mind moved quickly as he thought furiously. What move would be effective? Did he have to use the archaic wasteland sacrificial art? Zhuo was confident in the power of the archaic wasteland sacrificial art, but in his mind, that was his ultimate move. If he used his ultimate move on the first challenger, what could he do for the rest? He could use the archaic wasteland sacrificial art on every one of them. The power of the archaic wasteland sacrificial art was powerful, but the expenditure was also astounding. If Zhuo used it once, he probably would have to leave the wasteland beast chessboard. Then there would be no challenge he could accept. Definitely unprofitable. An extra challenger was an extra sum of money. The longer he persisted, the more he would make. Zhuo knew this very well. His goal in coming to the 10-finger prison was to find a clue to the battle of sealed extinction. But this required money, lots of money. No. He could not use the archaic wasteland sacrificial art. The gold light under his feet flashed. He continuously disappeared and then appeared as though he was teleporting and roamed around Qinghua Shui to search for an opportunity. As Zhuo expected, blossoms of blue flowers continuously formed and floated up from Qinghua Shui's upheld hands. She was still elegant and relaxed like a girl putting out flower lanterns at the river's edge. But when she raised her head, it was possible to see the burning battled desire occasionally from her amber eyes. The gold light flashed under his feet. He seemed to pass through the void, suddenly appearing and then disappearing. The gold light entered Zhuo's vision. Not knowing what to do, Zhuo's heart suddenly shifted. Since Golden Crow Feet was able to be used in the Wasteland Beast chessboard, then what about the other transformations? There were 6 transformations of the Great Damo physique. Other than the Golden Crow Feet, there were 5 more. Were they also able to be used? Zhuo's eyes suddenly burned. He had never used some of the transformations of the Great Damo physique. He finally had the chance to use the ultimate moves he had worked so long on. It was like a sword that had been sharpened for a long time. It was being unsheathed to drink the fresh blood of the enemy. In a moment, a strong desire for battle came from the deepest part of his body like a burning lava flow that spread throughout his entire body. Chapter 381, Walked Out of the Gravestone. The 6 transformations of the Great Damo physique, Light Void Wings, Golden Crow Feet, Day Script Palm, Flame Seal Armor, Midday Blade, and Great Day. Light Void Wings primarily enhanced speed and were as fast as lightning. The Golden Crow Feet enhanced strength and had the power of 30,000 caddies. When the two were used together, they lead to endless possibilities, and were the 2 moves that Zhuo was most familiar with. He had also practiced the other 4 moves but never used them in actual combat before. Zhuo's mind moved again. An even more outrageous thought came out. If he used all 6 transformations simultaneously, what would it be like? When this thought came about, it securely took hold over Zhuo's thoughts and was unable to be forgotten. Why didn't he try? The gold light under his feet seemed to unwind like golden threads and quickly climbed up along his calves. Qinghua Shui had no other thoughts in her mind. Blue flowers rose in the 2 hands she held up. The blossoms flew into the sky. These blue flowers that floated in the sky did not blindly chase Zhuo, but were spaced apart. There seemed to be invisible lines connecting the blue flowers to one another, reproducing and communicating among themselves. When the golden threads reached Zhuo's waist, his legs were completely enveloped by the golden threads, they were especially thick on his feet. The golden threads continued to climb onto his upper body. Whoosh, a pair of transparent wings suddenly shot out of Zhuo's back. The dense golden threads continued to spread up Zhuo's chest, onto his neck and then covered his face. In a flash, Zhuo was covered completely by the golden threads all over except for his eyes. The bright golden threads quickly dimmed, and a dark golden suit of armor covered Zhuo's body. The dark gold scales were the size of fingernails and were in layers like fish scales. When Zhuemo made the slightest move, they would sparkle like a wave of water. The helmet was round and tightly followed the contours of Zhuemo's face. There was a black horn protruding from the top of the helmet, and rings of patterns were inlaid on the horn. The horn curved slightly forward and came to a sharp point. The pauldrons were like two balls of burning flame. On his left arm was a small dark golden round shield. In bright red the image of a flame was inscribed on the round shield. His right hand held a strangely shaped blade. It was broad at the front and narrow at the back. There was no curve on the blade at all. It was as straight as a ruler. The entire blade was enveloped in the flame. The armor was made of small scales that tightly wrapped around Zhuemo's legs, but from the outside, they appeared even thicker. From his feet 5 sharp claws extended outwards, similar to the sabaton like the claws of the fiendish soul panther. The 5 claws of the golden crow feet were like hooks that tightly gripped onto the ground. Zhuemo curiously examined himself. In the sea of consciousness, Pu Yao's expression shifted. He suddenly stopped commanding the guard camp. He carefully inspected Zhuemo. His expression quickly changed, his bloody pupil expanding as he exclaimed in shock. Great Emo physique. Xu Long, who had been receiving Pu Yao's instruction, was confused. Darren, what is Great Emo physique? Pu Yao ignored Xu Long, his bloody pupil tightly locked onto Zhuemo. How is this possible? How is this possible? How can this boy use Great Emo physique? He clearly is not a true-blooded Emo. He suddenly turned around his face, his gaze as sharp as a sword. He stared hard at the gravestone. It's you. A faint figure floated on top of the black gravestone. What surprised Pu Yao was this blurry figure gradually became distinct. Clean lines drew out a figure with feminine curves. Wearing a tight-fitting suit of battle armor, she held an extremely strange weapon, an enormous claw that was even taller than her body. The enormous claw was so lifelike it seemed alive. It was hard to imagine what being could have such a terrifying enormous claw. It seemed like the entire figure of the female warrior was under the enormous claw. Pu Yao seemed to see a ghost. He paled and was speechless. Little Poo, long time no see. A sweet teasing voice filled with laziness suddenly came from the gravestone. Pu Yao's lips shook. You miss me this much? A seductive soft laugh came from the gravestone. The sweetness in the voice seemed to come from the bone. The simple figure drawn by the clean lines on the gravestone continued to come into focus. It was like an invisible pen that was drawing stroke by stroke. On the blank face, eyes appeared and then eyebrows. In a blink, an ambiguously smiling beautiful face appeared on the gravestone. The eyes on this face suddenly blinked at Pu Yao. Pu Yao was stunned, he seemed to be petrified. Long legs reached out of the gravestone as their armor rattled. The figure that floated out of the gravestone like this. Complex patterns encircled eyes that were black like the deep of midnight, eyes filled with a wildness and seductive gaze. The bark brown skin that was exposed were as glossy as the best silk. The sexy figure was unable to be hidden underneath the battle armor. She walked lightly in front of a statue like Pu Yao. Bending down, she wore a dazzling smile. Little Pia, without any warning, her right hand grabbed onto Pu Yao's neck and pulled him up like holding up a little chick. Then with a sudden tug, she jerked him in front of her. There was still an enchanting smile on her face, but something seemed to roil in her black eyes, and her tone became extremely hostile. Little Poo, your attitude right now is not very good. The stunned Pu Yao looked dazedly at this pair of eyes. Countless memories came like the tide. His eyes suddenly became moist. Sniveling again, so boring. Pia, the female warrior, relaxed her hand. The vicious expression on her face turned to nothing and she muttered as she walked to the side. After a moment, Pu Yao finally focused. He stammered out a question, Darren, you are still alive? You want me dead? the female warrior lazily replied. She threw the enormous claw onto the ground, laid on it, and yawned. She said indistinctly, "Why am I so sleepy again?" Pu Yao was unable to restrain himself from showing joy. His lips trembled. After a moment, for some unknown reason, his nose became stuffy and tears welled up in his eyes. He said, "Darren, they all died, everyone is dead." The female warrior's body froze. A long while later, she sighed lightly, "Yes, everyone is dead, we are the only ones left." The long sigh carried deep loneliness, grief and guilt. The fully armored Zhuo felt as though he was a burning ball of fire. There seemed to be thousands of burning streams colliding, bursting and splashing inside his body. They released a destructive presence that made even Zhuo's mind waver. This was the first time Zhuo used all 6 transformations of the Great Daimo physique at the same time. What entered the 10-finger prison was only the consciousness. There was no fleshly body nor Ling power here, so how was he able to use the 6 transformations of the Great Daimo physique? Was it that his consciousness what was burning now? When this thought came about, Zhuo felt an explosion inside his mind. Countless golden flames suddenly shot out of the armor and burned. Zhuo turned to a person made up of fire. What is happening? Pu Yao gaped with wide eyes. He felt everything happening today was challenging the limits of his imagination. Everything was so fantastical and unbelievable. There was an astonishing change happening right now in Zhuo's consciousness that he could not understand at all. His Great Daimo physique is about to advance, the female warrior had her laziness back and said unconcernedly. How can he use the Great Daimo physique inside the 10-finger prison? Pu Yao asked a question that had long been in his mind. The Great Daimo physique has some substance, the female warrior casually said. This boy has pretty good luck. You taught him to cultivate the consciousness and he accidentally found a correct path to practicing the Great Daimo physique. Pu Yao's expression suddenly became strange. What Great Daimo physique, who wanted to cultivate that thing? After struggling inside, he gritted his teeth and opened, "Darren, I took him as my student." "Oh, that's your freedom, you don't have to report it," the female warrior waved her hand and said unconcernedly. Thinking about his teacher, Pu Yao forced himself to say, "Please, Darren, do not pass Mo's skills to him." "Little Pu, this is not good." The female warrior had a smiling face. Pu Yao's heart shook and he knew it was not good. However, he still decided to fight. "Darren, please respect the order of arrival." TSK, little Pu, weren't you the one that taught him the Great Daimo physique? Yao arts, so feminine, such a good little man, how can he be wasted by you? The female warrior still had a smiling face. Pu Yao's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot, the tendons in his forehead jumping. Little Pu, change to cultivating Mo skills too. I like men who are very masculine the most. The female warrior's eyes became intoxicated. Pu Yao finally could not suppress it. He jumped up and swore, "Damned woman, you dare call me feminine? Come on, let's have a good fight." The female warrior instantly had an excited expression. With one move, she raised the enormous claw that was multiple times larger than her body. Great, after sleeping for 3,000 years, it's been so suffocating. I want a fight. The two figures fought fiercely in Zhuo's consciousness. Stupid woman, don't think I'm afraid of you. You were only the commander because I let you, little Pu, my dear vice commander, you've never beat me. I was having mercy. In front of everyone, giving you face. Little Pu, you still like to boast as you ever did. Looking at the fact you guarded older sister for 3,000 years, sister will let you attack 3 times first. Guard you? My honored commander that thinks so highly about yourself. What I protected was the reputation of the corps. If the corpse of the corps commander landed in the hands of the enemy, it would be the shame of our corps. Little Pu, your mouth is still as sharp as before. Corps commander, you are still this shameless. Qinghua Shui looked in shock at Xiao Mo Gu, who was swallowed in flame. Her hand couldn't help but shake once. Was this a backlash from the Yao art? The invisible power released by the flame spread in ripples of heat. Her heart shook and her expression changed slightly. Inside the flame, the strange blade seemed to lift slightly. Chapter 382, Midday blade strike. The temperature of the prison battlefield suddenly rose. The blackness of the void became dark red. Invisible waves of heat came from all directions, and twisted everything in view. Qinghua Shui felt as though she was wading through molten lava and was going to burn at any moment. The blue flower held in her hands was like a candle flickering in the wind, likely to be extinguished at any moment. Xiao Mo Gu was covered in flame. On the other side was like a twisting ball of flame she could not clearly see. What was most terrifying was that her consciousness was unable to find Xiao Mo Gu. Qinghua Shui was shocked and couldn't help but panic. The sky full of blue flowers showed signs of becoming uncontrolled. The connection between her and them became increasingly weak. Pia pia pia. The sounds that were so weak they were almost indiscernible landed in her ears but were akin to lightning on a clear day. 7 blue flowers cut off their connection to her consciousness. Her complexion suddenly became white. From the day she first cultivated, blue flower, these beautiful blue flowers were like her closest friends, and were connected with her in her mind. She played with them, told them her innermost thoughts. She had never encountered any problems on the complex Yao arts recorded on blue flower, because her friends would help her. It was the first time that she had encountered the blue flowers cutting their connections to her. Why was it like this? Qinghua Shui had a bewildered expression. She did not know what to do about this sudden change. Amidst her bewildered eyes, that strange straight blade that was shrouded in the fiery flame sliced from top to bottom. This blow was unusually slow, so slow that Qinghua Shui could see it clearly. When the strange blade started to move downwards, the surrounding flame seemed to have been pushed by an invisible power and quickly left the blade. It broke into countless tiny flames that shot off towards the sides. Qinghua Shui seemed to have a feeling that this blade had sliced a ball of flame into a rain of fire. The entire space seemed to be ignited in this moment. The bright flame spread through the entire space like a snowstorm of the winter. It was so hot that waves of heat which could melt steel rose and lifted up a sky full of fiery rain. The sky suddenly became bright, wind and fire joining together. The power of the fiery rain expanded. The wind and fire twisted and engulfed the blue flowers. The strange and cryptic blue flowers disappeared in the air like bubbles popping. With the destruction of each blue flower, Qinghua Shui's face became a fraction paler. She wavered. Poof! When the last blue flower was destroyed, Qinghua Shui's face was as pale as paper. The light inside the amber eyes disappeared. Everything in her vision quickly became blurry. At this moment, a deep voice could be heard through the roaring of flame and wind. Midday blade strike. The Yao and the Mo that were fighting fiercely suddenly separated and stopped. They raised their heads at the same time to look at the void above their head. Pu Yao's expression was uncertain. The female warrior had a joyous expression. Pu Yao suddenly spoke, "Your entire life was ruined by that suit of armor, are you going to ruin him as well?" The joy on the female warrior's face stilled, and gradually dissipated. She seemed to think of something. Pain floated on her face. She held the enormous claw and stood woodenly. The expression on her face continued to change, sometimes joyful, sometimes painful. Pu Yao did not speak, and only looked silently at her. Hot. So hot. Zhuo Mo felt as though his entire body was burning. His blood, flesh, and bones were like dry timber that were being furiously swallowed by a crimson flame. His eyes were completely red, the color of red-hot steel. He did not know that a clear flame had appeared above his head. This clear flame was silent, but the outer flame had faint rainbow patterns. This flame quickly spread along Zhuomo's body. The moment the flame appeared out of Zhuomo's body, the wooden Egui suddenly raised her head, and a deep purple light lit up in the deepest part of the dull and unfocused eyes. Lil the fire, who had been sleeping in her arms, seemed to smell something delicious and woke up from its dreams. I had originally thought Darren was dead. Pu Yao stared at the female warrior and slowly spoke. To swear my oath. To abide by my ceremony. An extremely scornful expression came onto Pu Yao's face. Something so inflexible and trite, it is a miracle that it managed to pass down. The female warrior stood silently. It was this thing. Pu Yao's voice suddenly became high and filled with fury. It ruined Darren's entire life. Ruined the entire core. Everyone was originally able to survive. The female warrior bit her lips, her black eyes filled with pain. Darren said right before death that she wanted me to guard it, so it will not land in the hands of Shouja. Pu Yao's tone was low. I consented. I stood guard for 3,000 years, it did not land in the hands of Shouja. I hated it, wanted to destroy it. I once thought the day that I managed to escape, I will throw this damned thing into the rivers of hell. The time in the Yao subduing tower was really arduous to get through. Pu Yao had a reminiscing expression. If I had not promised Darren, I would not have made it through. I could not destroy it, so I had to endure. Being punished by lightning daily was nothing. What is most terrifying is to have no one to talk to, so I started to talk to it. Later, I did not hate it anymore. It is an inflexible idiot. There is no meaning in hating an idiot. However, Darren, Pu Yao suddenly lifted his head and stared directly at the female warrior. Are you going to ruin Zhuomo as well? The female warrior was silent. He is my student, Pu Yao said calmly. The black robe on his body seemed to flap in the wind, his black hair like countless snakes dancing. In the dark red bloody eye, the eerie red light slowly started to spin. His tone was as calm as usual. To follow Darren in the past, I did not complete my teacher's final wish. Darren, instead I fulfilled my promise to you. I cannot finish teacher's last wish, but I cannot let teacher's line of succession break in my hands. Zhuomo is my student. Darren, if you are going to put this ball and chain on my student's body, please do so after stepping over my corpse. The cold voice landed in the sea of consciousness. Black flames came out of the ground and turned to curving snakes of fire that gathered from all directions below Pu Yao's feet. Ming Ju Zi suddenly raised his head, his pupils shrinking. He stared at the prison battlefield. Beside him, Su Wei's expression changed as well. Covered in the formation, the prison battlefield lit up with a dark red light. This patch of red light was massive and almost covered the entire prison battlefield. Ming Ju Zi and Su Wei exchanged a lot, and found shock in each other's eyes. Such powerful fire Yao arts. Su Wei was frazzled. Due to the formations outside the prison battlefield, the presence that leaked out was not strong. However, the pure fire contained in this thread of presence made every spectator change their expression. Fire Yao art, Ming Ju Zi murmured soullessly. His expression was very strange, his eyes shocked and puzzled. He paid far more attention to Xiao Mo Gu than Su Wei did, and knew much more information than Su Wei. The strange wasteland beast chessboard, the strange Yao art problems, the strange Yao art cages, adding on fire Yao arts now. How many Yao arts did Xiao Mo Gu really know? He was so young, how had he cultivated? Everything that Ming Ju Zi thought was common knowledge seemed to be completely upended by this mystery person. Who was he? Yu Zi Zhou raised his head to look at the sky filled with red light in the prison battlefield. His expression became serious. He had regretted being late and to not have been the first to challenge Xiao Mo Gu. Before today, Xiao Mo Gu was just a dancing clown in his eyes. If it was not for Miss Ji Liu, he definitely would not waste time on such a minor character. But such powerful Yao fire arts. He had just finished registering with Hong and was at the edge of the prison battlefield. The pure fire Yao art presence spilling out of the prison battlefield shocked him. Hong, send one in. A deep voice came from inside the prison battlefield. The speaker seemed to be suppressing something. All right, Darren. Hong seemed to wake up from a dream, turning to Yu Zhizhou and saying, Mister, you may enter. Yu Zi focused his attention. He did not dare to slack off, his consciousness at full power as he stepped forward with a grave expression. The scenery in front of him changed. The surroundings were bright red as though he was submerged in molten metal. Invisible heat waves blew against him. His expression changed. Such strong fire Yao art. He had to channel his powers to withstand these terrifying heat waves. His expression became even more grave. As one of the Jade clan, he was not afraid of fire. However, he was forced to use his powers to just stay here up, so he recognized how powerful it was. Zuo stared with blood-red eyes at Yu Zhizhou in front of him. His entire body was inside a golden flame. The pain of burning tore at his nerves. He could clearly feel the pure flame slowly permeating his consciousness. His consciousness seemed to shun these flames. Yet the golden flames were domineering and forcibly permeated his consciousness thread by thread. What was this thing? He gritted his teeth and bore the pain. The rich and tyrannical power occupied his entire body, and the pain was like thousands of ants chewing on his body, especially his palms and back. Zuo had to focus his attention on the enemy in front of him. This way, it seemed that the pain he felt would lessen. He gathered all the strength in his body, and the midday blade in his hand viciously struck at Yu Zhizhou. Midday blade strike. The sky was full of wind and fire that howled as it shot at Yu Zhizhou. Yu Zhizhou's expression changed slightly. With a cold snort, his left leg shifted back slightly, his hands made a shape as they were holding a large ball, and drew a perfect circle with ease in front of his chest. If Su Wei and the others saw this scene, they would have exclaimed, the ultimate defensive technique of Yu Zhizhou, interconnected jade rings. An ultimate move right at the start. Without time to think, Yu Zhizhou instinctively used the strongest defensive Yao art he could do. 1 created 2, 2 created 4. In a flash, rings of light covered Yu Zhizhou. Pew pew pew. The storm of fire hit the rings of light, and both were destroyed. Rains of fire continuously landed on the rings of light, and rings of light were continuously destroyed. But the number of light rings did not lessen. Instead they increased, and became more numerous. Zuo felt there was an unstoppable flood inside his body that spread along his left hand and was going to burst from his left palm. He did not even think before slamming his palm towards the thick rings of light. Chapter 383, You Should Die. This palm struck the rings directly. The day script on the center of Zuo's palm suddenly lit up. A vast and scorching power burst forth from the center of his palm. This power was extremely strange. It did not blow away the rings of light, instead, like a tiger reaching out with its head from the cage, it bit and held its prey. The sea of light rings were securely latched onto by Zuo's left palm. The day script continuously released golden yellow light that corroded the rings of light. A golden boundary rippled through the rings of light as it moved towards the center of the barrier. Yu Zhizhou's expression changed greatly. He felt a tyrannical presence corroding his interconnected jade rings at an astounding speed. What was this? It was the first time he had encountered such a strange Yao art. This domineering power spread so quickly it almost exceeded Yu Zhizhou's imagination. He had just managed to gather all of his consciousness, and his vision already turned to a golden yellow ocean. Yu Zhizhou had never thought he would ever be pushed to such a sorry state one day. No, such a hopeless situation. This was only the second move the other had used. The second move, and it forced him to such a state. A dancing clown. He suddenly thought of this phrase. A feeling of humiliation like never before instantly rushed every inch of his nerves. How could a person as proud as him be defeated in 2 moves by a person he thought of as a dancing clown? How could he? Yu Zhou glared. The elegance and relaxed face was now unusually twisted. Deep pride was mixed with unprecedented humiliation. He was like a gambler that had lost it all, and went all in with his life. All of his consciousness and his strength was channeled into his arms. He held his arms as though he was embracing the oncoming golden light and slowly pushed forward like he was pushing a mountain. His face trembled fiercely and showed signs of instability. Jade, gritting through his teeth, Yu Zhou slowly spoke while visibly trembling. Every part of his body was trembling. The 2 curved arms he held in front of his chest slowly moved forward amidst this shuddering. Every fraction he pushed forward, the vibrations in the space around him increased by a fraction. Born, just as the born was squeezed from his mouth, the golden light had spread to the last ring of light in front of Yu Zhou. The golden light collided with Yu Zhou's arms without any finesse. Yu Zhou's body froze and his pupils suddenly expanded. Pia. Yu Zhou's palms popped. Pia. The wrists exploded. Pia. The forearms exploded. Pia pia pia. After a string of noises like popcorn popping, the explosion spread along Yu Zhou's arms to his body. Yu Zhou's eyes were enormously wide. He looked in disbelief as his body exploded inch by inch. An unwilling wail suddenly was stopped. There was a dazzling golden ball of light that covered Zhuomo's left palm that was like a sun. He maintained his striking pose motionlessly. All the flames over his body suddenly burrowed into his body. The red light faded from his crimson eyes and revealed golden yellow pupils. The golden yellow pupils were indifferent like that of a deity gazing down on ants, but the expression of pain on his face did not fade but increased. The indifferent gaze contrasted with the pained and twisted expression, forming an extremely strange image. The midday blade in his right hand was trembling. The golden ball of light on the left palm dissipated, and the sun script at the center of the palm faded. "Palm, let another one in." The hoarse and deep voice contained threads of insanity as it came out of the formation. "What little Poo has said is very wise." The female warrior suddenly raised her head and looked smilingly at Pu Yao. She nodded heavily and said, "This stupid armor really shouldn't be passed down anymore." The gravestone shook fiercely as though it was very discontent with the female warrior's words. The roiling black clouds looked as they were going to burst out. "Shut up." The female warrior's expression cooled. She raised the enormous claw in one hand and heavily smashed it down on the gravestone. With a clang, the earth shook. The shaking gravestone froze. From the point it was smashed, a web of cracks snaked out. Crack whoosh, a pile of broken rock fell off the gravestone. The black clouds that had just came out of the gravestone seemed to be hit with a body paralysis curse, and froze in the air. Such a powerful blow. His presence almost at his peak, Pu Yao's eyelids jumped. Pia pia pia, the black flames that had burrowed under his feet suddenly exploded simultaneously, and he was covered by a burst of black smoke. Cough cough cough. Pu Yao's coughing passed out of the black smoke. When the black smoke dissipated, Pu Yao was singed and covered with ash. He looked with unfriendliness at the female warrior. The female warrior gave Pu Yao a flirtatious glance as though nothing had happened. She turned her face, and when she looked at the gravestone, her tone was cold. "Clean it up." The gravestone shook. Whoosh, the broken pieces that had broken off seemed to grow legs and climb into the place that had been smashed. Piece by piece, they went back to their original spot. In a blink, the gravestone seemed to be untouched again except for the web of cracks extending from the top of the gravestone. The power was just as terrifying as it had been in the past. Pu Yao glanced at the female warrior and sat down. There were too much to consider about everything that had happened today. Hadn't Darren died? How could she become alive again? Death could not be reversed. This had no connection to cultivation. Unless Darren did not die. If Darren had not died in the past, then there were too many possibilities in this. Golden soul. That was very possible. So Darren hadn't died then. Wait a moment. Pu Yao's head was lowered. His bloody pupil unconsciously narrowed into icicles. Darren died in his arms. Even if it had been 3,000 years, he still remembered that scene clearly. He was familiar with Darren, her personality, her temper, he was familiar with everything. The Darren in front of him was so familiar as she was 3,000 years ago. But Darren had died, she had really died. There seemed to be a silent sigh in the cold pupil. The pain seemed to have been washed away by time, so faint there was almost no trace, but Pu Yao suddenly raised his head. Darren is already dead. The female warrior furrowed her brow and was slightly discontent. Pu Yao seemed to not see it, and said to himself in a light voice, Darren is dead, both her soul and body destroyed, there was nothing left. His right hand came out of its wide sleeve and spread its fingers, feeling the air rush past them. He looked directly at the female warrior and said calmly, I know it, Darren died. The blood-red pupil was so cold there was not a shred of warmth. He raised his hand, and a black flame jumped in his hand. His black hair started to dance again, and the silk-like black clothing moved despite the lack of wind. The entire sea of consciousness seemed to slow down. Gradually, only one rhythm could be heard, only one sound. Dong dong, dong dong, dong dong. The female warrior's expression changed slightly. Her eyes locked onto the thread of black Yao fire on Pu Yao's hands. The strange rhythm in the space was the exact same as the rhythmic flickering flame on Pu Yao's hand. The golden soul really is a good thing. It seems you've recovered a fair bit. Pu Yao's expression was indifferent. The bottomless crimson pupil slowly revolved and a scornful smile that was as cold and sharp as a knife's edge suddenly jerked at the corner of his mouth. You also recovered your usual idiocy. The female warrior suddenly spoke. But the voice changed from the sweetness and flirtatiousness of just now and became as simple and wizened as an old person. How did you find out? Before the sound landed, the female warrior's body collapsed into fine black powder. The black dust danced and gathered in the air to turn into a ball of black smoke. Inside the black smoke, the figure of a male was discernible. You want me to tell you how idiotic you are? Ha! The scorn on Pu Yao's face grew. TSK, 3,000 years, you finally showed your face, it really wasn't easy. Haven't you wanted to force me out all along? The male inside the black smoke glanced at the black fire on Pu Yao's hands. He said in a deep voice, I think we need to have a good discussion. Discussion? Pu Yao raised an eyebrow ambiguously. He took away the black fire in his hand and said unconcernedly. Fine, discuss. Who are you? Gravestone armor, called protection, you can call me Wei. The black smoke covering his body disappeared, and revealed Wei's true appearance. He was wearing a body of black armor and seemed to have great bearing. His brow was straight and his eyes bright, he seemed full of righteousness. He was not as old as his voice seemed, and he bowed towards Pu Yao respectfully. Wei. Oh, not a bad name. Pu Yao narrowed his eye. Due to the previous owner, your heart is filled with hatred towards me. I am able to understand this, Wei slowly said. His voice was calm and neutral. It had a power that reached straight into the heart. What she protected seemed to be idiocy to you, but her resolve to protect was the source of her power. Pu Yao smirked coldly. TSK, so high-sounding. Wei's gaze looked into the distance as he was reminiscing on something. His voice became distant. Every soul has something they are willing to give their life for. His gaze came back and looked at Pu Yao. Isn't it also the same for you? Pu Yao still had a cold smirk. Don't spout these little pretenses in front of me. Alright, you say. Wei did not argue, nodding and saying without hesitation. I say. Pu Yao narrowed his eye that was like a bloody red blade. He said lightly, I say, you should die. Wei's expression changed greatly. His figure turned to rolls of black smoke and flew towards the gravestone. Whoosh! Black flames sprouted from under the gravestone and completely enveloped the gravestone. Wei hurriedly stopped his body. He seemed to be extremely wary of this kind of black flame. You should die. Pu Yao stalked towards Pu Yao, a jumping flame being held in the air above his hand. The beautiful and dark face was filled with murderousness, his voice so cold there was no thread of warmth. For pretending to be her, you should die. Pu, you cannot kill me. Wei stared at Pu Yao with a calm expression. I know. The murderousness on Pu Yao's face suddenly disappeared and he said with a strange and dark smile, however, after 3,000 years, how can I not have spent any of my thoughts on you? Wei's expression really changed this time. A dazzling light lit up on Pu Yao's hands and illuminated the entire sea of consciousness. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.